Okay, I would like to call our public hearing to order for fiscal year 2021 budget, Truth in Taxation. I would be glad to hear from anybody who would like to speak on the budget or Truth in Taxation at this time. So,
welcome.
2, 5, just so you know. That counts. All right.
Were there any email public comments for the Truth in Taxation hearing?
The only one I got was that asked to clarify how it's calculated.
Mm-hmm. I did not get any emails on this. All right.
I got the one that I responded to.
I got
Actually, two.
a phone call, so about this, and I will say that the phone call that I got was from a lady in the city. She and her husband would have liked to have been here this evening, but for health reasons decided to stay home. And but she did want to say that they have to make economies in their homes, and they say that the city needs to do the same thing. So that was the feedback from the resident that I spoke to earlier today.
Would any of you like to address the public hearing
You can
on
just
property taxes?
come up. You don't.
No?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we just want to make sure.
Okay.
It's your time if you want it.
Yeah, we're going to wait for another about 3 minutes and before we close this public hearing, just in case somebody's running a little bit late.
I'll speak to it, Mayor.
All right, let's hear it.
Since I'm here, I might as well.
You might as well. And you could make a clean sweep. I think you are signed up to speak.
It's the Willoughby Show.
I would have
Yes.
signed up for more if I'd known that I wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
I followed a little bit the property tax increases. My property tax increased as well. I don't think the city is actually increasing taxes, right? This is just a side effect of people's property values going up, and it being a percentage-based calculation means people will pay more. Not terribly controversial to me at all, right? Like the way that we calculate it is the same, the percentage is the same. And I mean, if the city can use the funds, that's great. If not, then let's adjust it down. And if the city feels like the rates are inappropriately affecting certain classes of people, which I don't think in this instance it would have. It would be the larger homes and the other homes that would feel a bigger impact. Then great, we can make an adjustment there. But otherwise, I feel like, great, the taxes, I feel like it's very fair the way that we decide how to do it. And if you agree or don't agree with property taxes, that's a different question. But nothing, so it's kind of a non-issue comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And for anybody watching at home, Truth in Taxation to me is a way that we can discuss the budget, as a community every year. And what it allows, because of how the law reads here in Utah, you cannot capture the increase of property values on people's homes unless you have Truth in Taxation. And the reason to not have Truth in Taxation is to not increase that. It's not the rate stays the same, but what happens is that you get behind. And so we've had, back in 2014, it was the first year in 20 years they had held Truth in Taxation. And
2019.
no, it's 2014. Yep. So, and they did increase property taxes at that time.
A big increase.
And they had not done it in a long time. We are having the public hearing on Truth in Taxation. Anybody who would like to speak to that is welcome to come up and share their thoughts. I see we have two new people. We haven't had, we've had one comment so far. If you would like to share your thoughts on taxes here in the city, we'd love to hear it. Okay. Any additional comments from council on truth and taxation, the process, and?
Mayor?
Yes.
I would just say, I mean, for me, being an accountant and understanding numbers, this is a very complicated process, how property taxation works. And even looking through my own property tax statement that I received, I had to spend some time to figure out why, if the city has got a 2.25 or 2.52% increase, you know, my taxes went up more. That's because my property value increased by over 6%. Versus the average in the city of 2.5%. So therefore, my property taxes went up regardless of the truth in taxation. And I don't think a lot of people understand how that works, that it's an overall assessment and individual circumstances will be different than the overall averages. So it's a very complicated process, but if people want to understand it, happy to help them understand that. So appreciate those that have emailed and asked the questions, and we've tried to reply to those.
Okay, yeah.
Councilmember
Barbara.
I think the other piece I would say to this is that holding this truth and taxation hearing is not committing, the city isn't committed to anything. It's basically the chance for public to come be heard and for us to look at our options. And so I think it's a great process to follow, and the more we do it, the more familiar we'll get, because it is kind of complicated. And so that was one of the main questions I had from residents this week, and I was happy to say this is your chance to be part of the process. That's a key part of our representation. So thank you to those who have been involved.
Yes.
Can I ask Dean a question?
Yes, I think you may, Councilmember Adams.
So Dean, you know, and maybe Andre, you could answer also, but the idea that, you know, what we received from Mr. Altum, is it? Of our property taxes estimate, does that include the 2%, the average 2% increase? I guess what I'm saying is, if we don't adopt the truth in taxation and don't adopt the increase, does that mean we just don't get to take that money out, but you're still going to get charged the same amount? Or does that change what his assessment is?
You want me to try to address that, Dean, or you got a mic?
I guess my response would be is the tax rate is actually pushed down when we do that. So instead of the current rate that we have, the tax rate would be now at a lower rate because it's a revenue-based system.
We need a, Dean,
Dean,
can you grab
we can't
the mic?
hear you
Come up to the
for-
mic. Nobody online can hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, as Andre mentioned, truth in taxation is a little bit complicated. It's backwards from what you would think. Usually you would, take the value multiplied by the rate. But the way truth in taxation works is you take the revenue you received last year, divide it by the assessed value that the assessor has determined, and that determines the rate. So what happens is you're guaranteed the same amount of revenue that you received the prior year, plus any new growth revenue, but you're not able to capture any assessed value increases of individual properties. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
Well, it just, to me, the most complicated part of it is for people at home, sitting at home, myself, if I were an average Joe, I'd say, okay, so if you guys approve this tonight, is what Mark Altum sent out to me going to increase, or is it going to decrease? His estimate of how much I'm going to have to pay in property taxes.
It would increase.
It would increase from what he's,
Well, no, he
The
gives you
rate
both
itself.
numbers. He gives you, here's if there's no, if the rate is allowed to float down based upon the assessed values, or if the rate is held flat. They give you two columns with, here's if the budget, if no budget change happens, here's if the proposed budget change happens, what your taxes would be. So they give you both of those numbers.
Because I know we've been talking about like how it's $8 a year, but to me, those two numbers were like, the difference
That's-
between those two numbers was like $200.
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier, is that the challenge you have is that your individual property may have moved differently than the overall
Than the
city
average of the
average.
city, yeah.
So the city average is 2.5%. As I said, my taxes went up because my property increased by over 6% in value. So essentially what happens is somebody else's property went down in value, mine went up, they average out. And so they pay less, I pay more, but overall, the city gets the same amount of money.
Got it.
So, to simplify it if I can, I don't know.
Yeah, Councilmember Blackman.
All right, if I can. The city receives $1 million, okay, from property taxes. That's your budget. Let's say your budget you present is $1 million. The city gets $1 million from property tax. You go through the year, inflation. So now your same bills that cost you last year $1 million are now $1,005,000 or whatever. If you don't do truth in taxation, you still get the $1 million and the $1 million only. You don't get any additional money to cover that inflated cost that you incurred as a city. So that's really what truth in taxation is, because when you figure new growth, usually new growth doesn't pay for itself. It's really, but if you do truth in taxation, then you can capture that inflation, and now the 105,000 or $1,005,000 or whatever it costs you to do the exact same thing you did last year, you can do that with the additional amount. But if you don't do the truth in taxation, you're going to have to figure out where to get that additional $5,000 that you incurred in inflation.
And I agree with that. I think the only issue I would have is that if you were able to budget correctly and only spend 900,000 of the $1 million that you got, then maybe for 2 more years you can keep going at $1 million, because you've figured out how to work with. I guess it's not like you don't have to spend it just because you get it.
Kaysville City didn't do that for 20 years, and then when they built the police station and
Yeah.
had to bond for the police station, and they had to do an increase to cover additional police officers, they had to do about 100% tax increase. And Prop 5 also hurt, because you were no longer able to use power funds for things that we did in the past. And so because of that, instead of doing the increments of some truth in taxation, Kaysville City residents got hit with a 100% tax increase almost.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right, that's okay. So that's kind of a primer on truth and taxation. Would anybody like to speak? It is the public, this is the opportunity for the public to weigh in on this. All right. Seeing no,
I did have
Councilmember
one
Tran.
clarification. So, our property taxes went up a lot also. We got the notification and we thought, oh my gosh. But just to clarify, of the 8% that our valuation increased, the city doesn't get that full 8%, just to clarify, right?
Correct.
They only get a very small
No, so
percentage.
what happens is, if your
Just so that
property went
people-
up more than the city average, somebody else's property went down, and so therefore, they're going to pay less taxes, you're going to pay
Maybe
more,
more.
the city gets the same amount in total.
Right, okay, I just wanted to make that clarification, because
Yeah.
I know sometimes people see their bills and think, wow, Kaysville's getting so much money, that's ridiculous, and they don't realize,
Well,
at least
then-
I didn't realize that it's not the city
The
getting.
the other thing is, when you look at the total bill, the city of Kaysville gets like 5% or less of the total property taxes on the bill.
Is that about right?
I thought it was 13, yeah.
Is
12,
it
13?
12% of it? It's not 12% of my total.
It's not the whole thing.
All right.
Probably have to get a better calculator.
I just know that the amount of money that I end up paying in taxes is well worth the service that I get for police and fire and roads and snow removal and all the rest. It's well worth it to me, because if I tried to privatize all that and pay for that myself, there's no way I could afford it. So, all right. Last chance. Okay. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Do we have to have a motion, or you?
I don't know. Let's,
Yeah, we
might
could-
as well.
Yeah.
I'll move we close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Lortz, seconded by Councilmember Barber. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And we will, in 4 minutes, start truth and taxation hearing proper. All right.
Nice of you to show up.
I would like to call the special city council meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is the adoption of the 2020 certified tax rate for Kaysville City and the final fiscal year 2021 budget. Dean, do you want to recap for us at the microphone, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The action item tonight is a fairly new statute where after the Truth and Taxation hearing, you hold a special council meeting to adopt the tax rate on the same night as you hold the hearing. So the action item tonight is to adopt a resolution adopting the certified tax rate, and the current budget includes that rate at the current rate, 0.001589, I think. In addition to that, the resolution calls for adopting the final fiscal year 2021 budget with that new rate. Now, that doesn't mean that this becomes the final budget. You can amend the budget at any time. In fact, we'll talk about that later tonight and kind of a timeline. But anyway, the action item tonight is that.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so council, we've had a pretty good discussion on this heretofore. Any questions from council on this resolution? Okay. All right. Therefore, I would entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we adopt the 2020 certified tax rate for Kaysville City and the fiscal budget 2021 budget with the stipulation that staff comes back to us within 45 days to show the additional 1% cost of living that we talked about, the merit raises that staff decides are necessary, and how we can look forward to hiring some firemen.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Blackham, seconded by Councilmember Adams. Comments at this time? Comments, whether to the motion or to the budget generally? Councilmember Tran?
Yeah, I was going to say, my comment would be that I would support this motion because we do have some issues in terms of making sure that we can retain and hire wonderful people to work for us. They're all doing a really good job. It is an issue in terms of not having enough staff to do some of the essential duties and responsibilities within the city. And I would like to be able to see a plan as to how we might be able to accomplish some of these things and hit these goals. And so I realize it's a sensitive time within the world, but I also realize that these are essential services. So that's my comment there.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilmember
He raised
Adams.
his hand first.
Okay.
Go to Adams.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Take this off while I'm talking. One of the things that interests me most about this is that we are number 4 out of the largest 50 cities in the state. We're number 4 as far as the least expensive to live in. And our average cost to live in Kaysville is around $420 a year. And so, as the mayor pointed out earlier, to have snowplows and police and fire and everything that we enjoy living in this great city for $420 a year is pretty incredible. I feel like the fire department is a giant issue in our city, and I saw firsthand of this happen where when the fire crews came to an emergency, there would have been nobody else to go to another emergency anywhere else in our city. And So I see the need for this to happen, and I don't think it's going to cost us. While at the same time, I want to stay at number 4, I wouldn't mind going to number 3. I think that this is an essential item, and I think that the last thing you want is to call the fire department and nobody pick up the phone. So I appreciate that Councilmember Blackham is earmarking this. However, I mean, for that reason, I really appreciate it, because I don't think we should just keep pulling in money without reasons why we're going to spend it. Does that make sense? And so
Have a plan, yeah.
have a plan,
Yeah.
because I think that, it would be great for us to have this meeting and say, no, we're going to lower taxes because we were able to come in under budget last year. And so I hope that that's what we can do going forward.
Okay. Councilmember Lords.
So I guess I'm going to take a little different approach, and I don't like the motion for the fact that we're putting stipulations and timeframes, that I think that it's appropriate for us to revisit it. As Dean said, at any time we can revise and amend the budget. And I think as we get more information and as this pandemic and the impacts flow out or flow through, we'll be able to have better information to make a better decision. Based on the information I worked with Dean that we'll talk about a little bit later, I do think that we have underspent in 2020, don't need the $88,000 to be able to make things work, which would not cover the merit increases that he's proposing be put into the budget, nor would they cover the firemen that he wants to put in there. So, but I do think that we will have that flexibility if things work out as we're seeing them work out with the economy recovering quickly in Utah. We are in a unique situation in the country, both in Utah and specifically in Caysville. Before the pandemic hit, our sales tax revenues were growing very strongly, north of 8%, I think. And when the pandemic hit, we took a hit, but really not near as what you're hearing in other cities like New York that's talking about billions of dollars being lost. We didn't lose. We actually are going to be above last year. 2020 will be better than 2019, I think. And once those numbers finalize out, I think we will have a lot more flexibility to address the needs that Councilmember Blackham is talking about. I too would like to see them addressed, but I don't think we should put a timeline to drive that decision faster than the information warrants it. And I think that if we plan for something more in the tune of, 90 days, I think we'd have better information and be able to make a better decision at that point.
All right. So at this time, you could either offer a substitute motion or offer a friendly amendment. Or just vote no.
Maybe you could ask Councilmember Blackham if he would entertain the longer term. Are you saying, excuse me?
Councilmember Adams.
I've discussed this a little bit with Dean, and he feels like 45 days is adequate for staff to get back to us, because we've made some promises, and I don't want to just keep moving dates back.
The 1% increase has already been
The 1%, but we
input
talked
in.
about too, as you recall. And I
So
made
was
a
your
to
motion
do that.
for an additional 1%?
The additional
Okay.
1%, because we talked about that before. We talked about giving the 2% cost of living. He says, we'll do the one now, but when we
Yeah.
look at stuff in August, if it's there, then we'll go ahead. Well, we've got those numbers. Those numbers are back, and we're actually better than we thought we were going to be.
Yeah.
So that at least gets the additional 1%. And then in the 45 days, we can talk about, the merit raises, and how we're going to get these firemen funded. And I'll give some background. I don't know if you want me to go, which is this is a discussion, but when the pager went off in the year 2000, you got 10 to 15 people coming to the station because it was volunteer. They were not as, it wasn't as demanding a job at the time. There was only maybe 700 calls. Now they're at about 1,600 calls per year. They're highly qualified. They run an advanced ambulance. And when a call goes in now, you get 4 people. In the year 2000, you get 10 or 15. You get 4 now. You just can't operate it the way it used to operate. It's moved to a professional fire department. And to do that, and to think that we've increased our residents almost double, our calls almost triple, but yet we have a third of the firefighters respond in these emergencies. That's critical to me.
Okay, thank you. It is 7 o'clock, so unless there's anything pressing, let's call for a vote here. Councilmember Adams.
Oh, aye.
And we have no substitute? Just
No.
the 45 days? Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn the special city council meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, I'd now like to call the regular city council meeting to order for August 6th, 2020. And we are going to have an opening orchestrated by Councilmember Lawrence. Councilmember Lawrence.
Yes, I've invited Eric Jessen, who is a neighbor, to provide our opening this evening.
Good evening. My name is Eric Jessen. I am relatively new to the city of Caysville. My wife Bridget and I have moved here about 2 years ago now. We came to Utah because of a lot of things, but two primary things. Number one is we sort of got sick of people looking at us like we were killing the planet by creating useless eaters, i.e. our 7 children. We felt they were a blessing, and we wanted to be surrounded by people that agreed with us on that. Big win. Number two was that we wanted to be surrounded by more neighbors and more people that sincerely wanted to seek and follow the commandments of God. And that's why we came. So with that, I am not a humble person by nature, but I am truly humbled to be asked to do this today. And in order to put my prayer in context, if you would bear with me for a couple of minutes to read a few things in order to understand where my prayer is coming from. I mentioned a second ago, I am actually not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I do consider myself to be a member of my ward. They are, in fact, my neighbors. So I am perhaps slightly more aware of the scriptures of the church than those who are not members. I looked in the Pearl of Great Price. The Articles of Faith, number 12, states, "We believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates, and obeying, honoring, and sustaining the law." That has been an issue in this city recently. And on the church app, it refers to what the law is by referencing D&C 58:21-23, which states, "Let no man break the laws of the land, for he that keepeth the laws of God hath no need to break the laws of the land. Wherefore be subject to the powers that be, until he reigns whose right it is to reign, and subdues all enemies under his feet. Behold, the laws which ye have received from my hand are the laws of the church, and in this light ye shall hold them forth. Behold, here is wisdom." So what is wisdom? Wisdom is described throughout the scripture in many, many places, but for the sake of time, I'll just bring up a couple of spots. In Proverbs 2:1-8, quoting from the New King James, it says, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding, yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth. Come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly. He guards the paths of justice and preserves the way of his saints." And in Proverbs 4:5, it says, "Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth." So, getting back to the doctrines and covenants of why would we have no need to break the laws of the land. That no need would, of course, come from the Constitution of the United States, Amendment 1, which in part states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So in this context, the free exercise would be to follow the commandments of God. Then, in the guide to the scriptures, because we're referring to the Constitution, it defines it by referring to D&C 98.5 through 6 and D&C 101, 77 and 80. D&C 101, 77 states, according to the laws and constitution of the people, which I have suffered to be established and should be maintained for the rights and protection of all flesh, according to just and holy principles. And in D&C 101-80, it says, and for this purpose I have established the constitution of this land by the hands of wise men, whom I raised up unto this very purpose, and redeemed the land by shedding of blood. And then as far as D&C 98.5 through 6, I don't think it's in context unless you include 4 and 7 as well. D&C 98, starting in 4 going through 7, says, and now, verily, I say unto you concerning the laws of the land, it is my will that my people should observe and do all things whatsoever I command them. And the law of the land, which is constitutional, supporting that principle of freedom and maintaining rights and privileges, belongs to all mankind and is justifiable before me. Therefore, I, the Lord, justify you and your brethren of my church in befriending that law which is constitutional, law of the land. And as pertaining to the law of man, whatsoever is more or less than this cometh of evil. So in other words, following the laws of the land which are constitutional, it is conditional on them being constitutional, which necessarily means that they do not cause us to violate the commandments of God, as the definition of what would be a constitutional law when taking into account the First Amendment to the United States. So, how do we decide which laws of man are more or less than this and cometh from evil? That becomes an important question, especially for a body that is legislative in nature. Deuteronomy 8:3 says, so he humbled you, allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Lord. In Luke 4:4, Jesus quoted this when he said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that of God. In Proverbs 3, 5 through 7, it states, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. Referencing back to the laws of man that depart from this cometh of evil. So although I appreciate the humble nature of many on this council to concede that you may not be an expert in some things, I do not consent for you to seek the wisdom from declared experts of man. I humbly request that you seek the wisdom of what to do and what not to do from the words of God. So with that, it is my prayer that this council, this legislative body, be raised up, and that in the duties that they seek to follow, that they seek out to only pass ordinances and administrative rules that do not put the residents of this town, of this city, in the conundrum of whether or not to follow the commands of God or follow the laws of this city. And that you would furthermore seek out any unconstitutional laws that this city may already have passed by previous councils. And that in doing so, if we might consider doing that, that this city would become a beacon within the state of Utah to wake up the rest of the state, in particular the legislatures of this state, to follow that path. and to therefore seek out and destroy, repeal any unconstitutional laws of this state. And if they might consider doing that, that this state would then become a beacon to this country, which has obviously lost its way, and perhaps the Congress of these United States would wake up and do the same, and that perhaps then this country could then become a beacon to the world. And then, as Jesus said, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I submit this humbly in the name of God. Amen.
If you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, it is now a privilege to have a special recognition of the group I Support Kaysville Businesses. And I'd like to turn the time over to Councilmember Barber for that.
Thank you. We're super excited. I love to have community things highlighted during this meeting so we can have a little taste of what's happening out in our community. And this is one of the best things I think we could talk about right now. We have a group that I'll let them introduce themselves, but I'm really excited to have Tara Esplin and Jeff Bozen here to explain about something really awesome with the I Support Kaysville Businesses group. And I'll also say that we have another member, Brandon Barnett. Did I say that right? But that he's not here, but he is traveling. But I wanted to thank him as well for his efforts. So you two can come up to the podium.
He knows I'm going to talk longer. All right, my name is Tara Esplin. I've lived in Kaysville almost 15 years. It feels like a long time, but I know that I think you have to live here probably 5 generations to be considered a true Kaysvillian. But so along with Jeff, like Michelle said, we've been working with Brandon Burnett and Alicia Huntsman, another Kaysville resident, to create a social media platform called I Support Kaysville Business. And Brandon and Alicia would have liked to have been here. A little background about it. If you kind of think back a couple months to May, what was going on, maybe some of you were trying to block it out. It was kind of a negative time. We were in the middle of COVID shutdown, and it had been a couple months, and there was drama going on in Kaysville. I would walk out my front door, and my neighbor would be like, "Oh, Tara, can you believe what's going on in Kaysville?" And it was negative. Everywhere I looked, it was negative. And Brandon had created this Facebook group because he just was a little tired of people saying, you know, we need to support businesses, but nobody was doing anything. So it was just a little thing. But one weekend in particular, there was a lot of online activity and negativity going on, and I messaged him and I said, Brandon, I'd never met him at this point. It's just, you know, everyone cares. I've seen more people involved now than I have in a long time, but it's all negative. What can we do to turn the tide and get it focused on something positive? And we talked about how just a week or two prior, we woke up one Saturday morning, and on the Facebook citizens page, a post, Jeff had created a post with some hand sanitizer and some sanitizing wipes, and he said, you know, hey, it's a lot of drama going on right now. Let's lighten things up. We're going to do a drawing, comment what your favorite thing about Kaysville is, and I'm going to draw a number and give this. Like that time, you couldn't buy sanitizer. You couldn't find. I don't know where he found it. But
Don't tell. Don't disclose your sources.
But it was so popular, and everyone loved it. So when I was messaging Brandon, I said, let's figure something out like that, and harness this energy that's going around the town and try to turn it for something into something positive. And so we started this little group, and we started highlighting businesses. We highlighted Rickles Food Truck and the Hope Box Theater, and did little giveaway contests. And as weeks went by, in June, Dave Cook from Bowman's approached us, and he had this idea to, typically Bowman's is one of the most established businesses in Kaysville. They're one of our, Kaysville's biggest supporters. They do the, the big breakfast, and all of that was canceled. No 4th of July parade, no fireworks. And that was another thing that people were really negative about. So he said, we've got these, we had an old butcher block. We cut it up into 70 pieces. And, on the back, it tells a little bit about the history of how they rolled out millions of pastries, our famous Bowman's donuts on this butcher block. And he said, well, what could we do? We could sell them, we could give them away, but let's do something more fun because we don't have any July activities. So he asked for our help, and we committed to help him organize this series of events, giveaways, and every day they hid one block and gave one block to a local business to give away. And our little Facebook group kind of grew by the hundreds. We have about 1,700 members now, and we were able to have a lot of fun. 62 blocks were given away. It started out where a couple people, when they posted the clue of where the block were hidden, a couple people would go out. But as time went on, more and more people, and they were rushing out to try to find this block, and people really wanted to find it and take part in it, and it was a lot of fun. So I don't know, what I learned from this is Caysville is a pretty cool place. There's a lot of really good people in Caysville, and a lot of really amazing businesses in Caysville. And when we work together, we're even better. And when we can try to think of what we can do, whether it's waking up and getting on Facebook and creating a little giveaway for sanitizer and wipes, or, Bowman's didn't have to put in all that time and effort, but they wanted to give back to their community. And, some really great things came out of it. We talk a lot in this area about the power of families, that we can change the world through our families. I believe that if you take the next step beyond that, that our involvement in community can also really go far to changing our world. So I'm just happy I could be part of it. I had people ask me, they were so confused because I was online so much organizing this. They would be like, so do you work for Bowman's or the city? And when I said neither, I was just doing it to try to help out. They were so confused, but whatever we can do to try to help our community, I feel like that is something that can be, impactful. It can really help turn the tide. You can help strengthen a community. You can help strengthen, make a negative situation into a positive. And I'm sure Jeff would like to say a little bit, so I will let him.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Boson. I've lived in Kaysville probably 40 out of the 50 years. So I'm a true Kaysvillian, as you want to call it. I just woke up on a Saturday and thought, like she was saying, there was just the virus and just everything going on. Let's figure out something fun. So I started this drawing, and because I could get hand sanitizer and wipes, like you can go to the store and get a loaf of bread. So every week I would get some, and I'd stockpiled, not to hoard, but to give away. So every week I would give it away, and the drawing would only last an hour from the time I'd post it till the time it ended, and I'd only do 125 people, and within an hour it was done. But people would just keep commenting. There's ones where I'd have like 300 comments. I mean, it was just going and going. Well, week after week, it just started getting more and more crazy and more crazy. And so I decided, I'll reach out to the Kaysville business to see if they want to donate. And every business I talked to, no question, yeah, what can we do? Here's gift cards, here's a gift basket, here's this, here's that. I mean, it was just incredible, the amount of support for this. So I just kept going it every week, and I was getting calls on Friday nights, messages on Facebook from people, are you still doing the drawing? Because I'm going to set my alarm so I don't miss. I mean, it got so crazy. And so the hardest part wasn't the prizes. It was coming up with a question every single week. Because I tried to incorporate something about Caysville, but you've got the new Caysville and the old Caysville, and you try to find something that they can both come up with an answer. So that's been probably the toughest. And I've posted, I'll keep this going as long as I've got the prizes and everybody. I mean, people message me, you know, my father's sick, my mother's sick, we need these wipes, where are you getting them? Can you buy some for us and we'll come get them? So when I've gone to get mine, I've gotten extra to give to the people that cannot find their stuff. So it's been amazing, the community support on this. So I'm just gonna keep it going. I've got a stockpile of gift cards from everybody in Caysville, so I can probably go till Christmas with this thing. I've actually reached out to some businesses outside of Caysville. I've got some connections here and there. And so I'm getting some prizes from outside of Caysville, like from Layton and stuff that's close by. So I don't think anybody will complain about my prizes.
That's awesome.
Right.
And I do have, the next couple weeks, I do have a couple really cool prizes. I don't want to say because there's some people here I don't want to know about this, so.
They are very cool, though.
And I've got some connections with the news, and I've sent some emails out to them to see if they'd like to come up to Caysville and do a story on it. So
Cool.
hopefully they waiting to hear back from one, and hopefully they'll be able to come up and do something.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
We put a little video, like a picture video of, it was a lot of fun. A lot of people were involved, and we wanted to share that with the city council so you guys could see that. And, you know, anytime in the future, I know I speak for Brandon and Alicia, and I believe Jeff also, that, you know, we're more than willing to help support any initiatives like this. We believe in that, so.
Next 4th of July, next July, I plan to see you.
Congrats to all the daily winners and the grand prize winners.
Well, there were walk winners out there. Congratulations to Mazda Yoder. Yoder, you up.
Congratulations from Snowy Mountain Barbershop.
Ace Hardware would love to congratulate all the winners from the Bowman's Donut Walk Contest.
Congratulations from Eastwood Sushi and Rye.
Congratulations from the Kaysville Theater.
Congratulations from your parents on the motor. Congrats to the winners and James III.
Congratulations to all the winners from the Hope Box Theater, where we're bringing hope to families battling cancer through the performing arts. Congrats!
A huge congratulations from the city council.
Congratulations to the winners from our mother.
Congratulations. Bowman's 31 Days Giveaways from Blue Dogs.
Congratulations from Lisa's Passion for Boxing.
I just want to congratulate Jeff Bozick for winning the Fizz Prize Pack and for participating, and also this community for this amazing month that we've been able to support one another.
Thanks for all participating, and thank you very much to all your Caysville businesses and residents from the law office of Trevor B. Eldridge.
Very fun. Thank you. All right. Well,
Fantastic.
that's great. And we actually, in economic development meeting the other day, had an idea of, and I'll give you a call about whether or not you want to help us with this cunning plan that we have. So I'll give you a call.
And
All right.
one other thing I wanted to say is another huge thank you to this group. One thing we didn't talk about is they helped at the very end. Everybody had been winning things. We helped kind of finalize the whole month with a huge fundraiser, and it was amazing. Thank you so much for their help. We had a fundraiser for Mountain High School's food pantry on the very last day of the month, I think, and it was neat to see people who had had so much excitement about winning something turn it around and give back. The food drive was amazing. I just got an update today on how many donations we've had, and it's been incredible, and they'll all be matched by a really generous donor. And I can't think of a cooler thing to be part of. So my heart is very full of gratitude for my community. So thank you for your help and support of that as well. That was awesome.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, and maybe we should, develop like some sort of like little award or something that we can actually gift.
Yeah. I'm afraid Tara's walking away with my donut block, so Chief Oberg, if you'll keep a real close eye on her, I would appreciate that.
One thing.
Come on up.
Brandon wanted to be here, and he said, well, I do, but it's not about us. It isn't. It's not about us. So that's nice of you to say, but this really isn't about us. It's about the community, and we're just glad to be a part of that. So.
All right. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to declaration of any conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest? All right, sounds great. Consent agenda. Anybody want to move the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent items A through D on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Lord, seconded by Councilmember Tran. Any comments? All right, we'll go to a vote. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. We'll then move on to our action items. Action item A, consideration for adoption of a resolution of the City Council of Kaysville City, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $22 million aggregate principal amount of telecommunications sales and franchise tax revenue bonds, Series 2020 and related. Who is going to present this? I say it should be Shane. Shane.
I'm happy to. I just wondered if Andre wants to really badly. Okay.
No.
I think as a council, we're pretty clear on what this is. This is the authorization and the parameters resolution for the authorization of bonds for the fiber project pending a positive vote in November. We talked about this extensively, not just last meeting, but over the past 2 years. If there's ever been a teed-up agenda item, this might be it. We do have some professionals here in our audience that can speak to this if there are specific questions that Andre can't answer or that Michelle can answer. I doubt that that's the case, but Brad and Laura are here, and we appreciate them coming tonight. So I think that we are ready to move forward with this agenda item as presented.
Okay. We will now go to our public comment period, and we have Jacob Willoughby signed up to speak.
Hi, I'll do a quick introduction of myself again. Seem to adjust the microphone. I'm too tall. Just a reminder, I'm an officer of Citizens for Kaysville Fiber, a citizens group formed last year that was created in order to support the city in the creation of a fiber project. And we've done a lot of work and outreach and working with the city and communicating with the city in order to make sure that this is a project that all residents will be happy with. And I'm pleased to acknowledge that a lot of the people that were upset, like last year, this was a very big deal, right? And this was right during election time, right? And so a lot of you that were elected, the 3 new council members, the people that were out there, the majority of us, saw that your stance on this, and we voted for you with the understanding that you go through with this project and have it be a citizen's vote. And I think that's really the most important thing that people are looking for on this project, is that the people get to decide whether or not we do this. And so I appreciate that this action item is here. I know the action item doesn't quite state that it's depending on a public vote, but I know that's coming next, and I'll have comments on that in a second. So the importance, I don't know if everybody knows my background here. I have a master's in electrical and computer engineering. I've worked in the Internet of Things and smart home space for the past 10 years. And specifically the past 5 years, I've worked with a network of over 1 million devices that live in consumers' homes that consume bandwidth. And my specific job in that is making sure that those devices do not interfere with people's home internet connections. So I've spent a lot of time figuring out how the internet works and how specifically ways to make it better. And I can tell you right now that of all of the things on the horizon of technologies that are coming, fiber is without a doubt the best technology for us. Recently, a 5G internet company, a large one here in Utah, went out of business. They shut down. And a lot of people are confused about 5G because they don't understand that there's different types of 5G. There's 5G phones going on the market right now. That's not the 5G that's going to replace your home internet connection. And you know that because overnight the cell phone companies just suddenly announced, we now have 5G. You're like, well, what did you really upgrade to get 5G? Nothing, they just rebranded it, right? It's really a millimeter wave technology that does home internet connections. So that technology is not really promising in terms of home internet connections and broadband connectivity. I could go on a lot longer on about that. So I'm just excited about this, and thank you for following through and supporting our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That was the sum total of people who signed up to speak to this item. So we will go on to questions from council. Any questions at this time? Questions? Councilmember Blackham.
I just have one for Andre,
Okay.
and I just wanted to clarify.
Can you point your finger at him?
That one.
More stern.
No, because,
Shake it.
and the reason I say Andre, because Andre and Michelle have become the absolute experts in this. And I feel like you can answer the question as good, if not better, than anybody, okay? So it's a $22 million bond. It's a revenue bond, which is backed by taxes and that. And it looks like it's got a take rate that will pay for it after the first so many years. And the question I got that I want to, so if a person can pay the $1,700 up front and not have to pay the installation costs, is that correct?
So let me step back first a little bit, because a couple of things. So the parameter allows for up to $22 million. We are not saying we will take a $22 million bond. But yes, there is an option that they can pay $2,700 up front for the network infrastructure, and then their fiber fee would only be $3 instead of $25.
Then if 10 years down the road, they decide, I don't want to do this anymore, they can opt out.
They can cancel their
They
service.
can cancel the service, but they will still be obligated to pay if they didn't pay up front the $2,700.
If they don't pay up front, no, right now we anticipate that it will be month-to-month obligations, except for perhaps the 10 gigabit level, which requires unique hardware from all the other levels.
So if you canceled after 10 years, you would still be obligated to keep paying the installation cost that
No.
you took. You would not?
No, and except, like I say, except for the 10 gigabit service, that one may have a extra upfront fee for the equipment or a time period, but we're not looking to obligate people that they have to pay for it forever.
You pay for it when it's on your utility bill, when you're using it.
Oh, I was
when you're using it.
Okay, so that's where I'm confused. And I was under the understanding that if you don't have to have it. If it votes and it passes, you still don't have to have it. But if you choose to get it, then you don't have to pay the $2,700 up front. It's just part of your bill. But then 10 years down the road, when you decide, okay, I don't want this anymore, I thought you were still going to have to pay for
No.
half of that.
We've talked about some of that, but the issue really comes down to, we believe that the service and the quality of this is going to be so good, who's going to leave it? There's no better option out there in the marketplace. And so it's kind of like saying, you know what, I'm going to let you drive on the freeway to Salt Lake City, but you can opt out of it and not pay the freeway fee, and you can go on the back road at 20 miles an hour if you'd like to. Nobody's going to choose that. Once they have the freeway going 70, they're going to say, I'm always going to pay the fee and go down the freeway.
And I understand, the one
But no, we're not obligated.
And because when we talked about this last time, we said if you did cancel it, what you said you wanted, you're still obligated to pay for that installation cost until that's paid for.
Yes, I made that statement and then had some discussion within the TAC, and we came to the agreement that based on the benefits that this provides, there's no reason to lock them in.
Okay.
People have the choice, and,
that is a very key clarification.
you know, like I say,
Thank you.
other than perhaps the 10 gigabit service, which requires special hardware, that costs more
You
money.
can see where I was.
Yes, I understand where you're going.
I'm glad we clarified that.
Yes,
Okay.
appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions? Questions at this time? I will entertain a motion. And I'm
On the
going to
next
see
one.
if it's going to be Michelle or Andre who are going to make this motion.
I would love it from anybody. But I will make
This is too long to read.
I will make a motion that we approve the consideration for adoption of a resolution of the City Council of Kaysville City, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than 22 million aggregate principal amount of telecommunications sales and franchise tax revenue funds, Series 2020 and related.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Lortz. Any comments? Comments at this time? Councilmember Tran.
I do have a comment. First of all, before I make my comment, I want to thank Michelle and, well, Councilmember Barber and Lortz for all of the work. I mean, you guys have worked on this for a couple of years now. You know everything. I want everyone to know that, they've made themselves completely available for really long conversations, dinner conversations, daily conversations. I've spent hours with both of them, asking questions, as have most of the community. So I just truly appreciate that. That's all been done for free, just because they love this project and they're so supportive of it. And so I appreciate that, as well as the TAC members and the other people that have contributed. As awesome as it's going to be, I still personally have a couple questions about it. And so I just wanted to kind of express myself and for the record to know that, yes, even though this is presented as a Kaysville project, it doesn't mean that, at least for myself, speaking for myself, that I necessarily think we have to do it as a city. And I just want to let that be known, mostly because I have my own personal, reservations or questions about, is this something that the city really wants to commit to? I know that there are so many good reasons and there are so many great benefits, but I think that there are also some risks involved. One of the things that did concern me was the potential for change orders. We had a special city council meeting to approve a change order on the building remodel. I know that those are things that happen, but it was kind of like we were held hostage almost, having to approve this change order, because if we didn't approve it, then the contractor wasn't going to guarantee the work that was done. Yeah, I know you can't always anticipate everything, but things do happen, and that was a big hit. At least it was surprising to me. But it's one of those things that you had to do because we have to move forward with the project. We have to get the building done. So I know things like that can come up. I guess I'll just continue just going on record, if that's okay, a couple of concerns that I've had. When you talk to other service providers, because they're installing it and they're paying for that, they do lock you into some kind of contract. I guess I'm a little concerned just that, it's great to have options, and the month-to-month is great, I get it. But, who's to say in a couple of years something else comes, is created or invented or available? Does it mean that everybody's going to be locked into a contract? We're not going to be locking people into a contract, which is great. I like the freedom to choose. And it might be a superior thing for many years, but it might not as well. So, I still do have some concerns. I will also say, though, if this passes, and this is something that our community wants, I will 100% support it. We'll sign up for it as a family. I'll encourage everyone else to do it, because if it passes and it's what the community wants, we need to make sure it's successful. And so I'll do everything I can to support that and to encourage people to use the fiber, because it's going to be something that the city will have an obligation to repay if we don't have the participation and the subscription base that we anticipate having based upon the data that's been received, so up to this point. So I just wanted to mention that and just to state that. But saying that, I do appreciate everything that's been done, and I hope that we choose wisely, and I hope that the community really does research and realize that if we don't have the subscription, we don't have the support, once we approve it, once we vote for it, then it's going to be something that we're going to be all paying for, even if we didn't vote for it originally. And I just want to make sure that we all know what we're getting, and if we're on board, that's awesome. Let's be on board 100%. So that's my thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Councilmember Blackham.
The comment, Tammy, you stated it beautifully. I mean, I appreciate, those are great comments, and that's the way, you know, when I ran for council, I said, with this, it had to go to a vote. That's the only way that I could support is if it went to a vote. And that's why it's here now, that's why it's before the council, so that we can get it approved, so it can go to a vote of the people. And if the people vote for it, I feel like this council is obligated to support it. If it doesn't pass the vote, then it goes away. So that's where I'm at. Not a lot to be said. It's just that it's really important to me that it went to a citizen vote, and that's where it's headed.
Thanks,
Okay.
Mike.
Councilmember Lortz.
So I think, as has been said, I think I'm approaching the 10,000 hour level, so I can call myself an expert almost, but not quite. For me, I think on the bond, the biggest thing to understand, and I know that there's a lot of fear that is pushed about the bond and the length of the bond, the amount of the bond. But I think as Councilman Blackham has said before, in, what was it, the 80s, we took out a $20+ million bond for pressurized irrigation within the city. So this is not the biggest bond that the city has ever proposed, as has been claimed. But I think we would all agree that that has been a great benefit to our community, even though we ended up all having to pay every month for pressurized irrigation. I'd much prefer that than the water bills that I had in Layton when I had to use regular culinary water to keep my grass green. We've tried as best we can to provide flexibility within the bond so that we can protect the city and the city's finances from having taxes supported. We've tried to put in lots of different ways in which we can make sure that that doesn't happen. As we've put out there, the parameters give flexibility in that they've got cushion from what we think it will really be, but allow us, if the markets change, that we can still go and get the bonds without coming back to council to change the parameters. So that's why when you see on the website, we've got both at parameters, what the break-even looks like for take rate, and what it looks like in current market conditions, so people can understand that difference. And it does make a material difference, upwards of $100,000 to $200,000 a year, which is exciting that if we can lock in at these historically low interest rates, it would be a great opportunity to have that locked in for 30 years. Even though my estimation is that we will have it paid off in less than 20 years, that I do think people are going to find great value in this project. And I look at it in the same way of, I would never want to rent my house for 30 years and pay somebody else for my house. It's too important to me. It's my house, I want to live in it the way I want to live in it. And I think that communication line, the connectivity to my house, is just as important today. 10, 20 years ago, I didn't think twice about what was my connectivity to the internet. It was like, oh, I'll have some connectivity, that'll be great. Today, it is critical. I cannot function in my role, in my job, and especially in a pandemic, without connectivity. So do I want to pay rent for that line for 30 years of my life, or would I rather own that line and control what comes across it and what services I want on that line? And I think that's what this project does. It provides the control to the citizens, to the residents, that we will be in control of that connectivity, and no other company will be, no shareholders, no board of directors somewhere else. Our community will direct and run this project and the connectivity. Now, the city is not providing any service. make sure everybody's clear, we are not providing internet service, we're not providing phone service, we're not providing TV service. We are simply providing the infrastructure that allows connectivity to happen. Just like roads allow us to get from one place to another, this fiber will allow us to get data from one place to another. So it is a virtual highway. And as I alluded to before, I think the difference is this technology, fiber, has been around for 40-plus years. In fact, Corning, who is our vendor to install it, invented the first low-loss fiber optic cable in 1970. And cables that they installed in the 70s and 80s are still used today. They have not yet found the top-end limit of how much data they can push across those fiber cables. And every business, every country, if they want the best stable connection with the most bandwidth, they use fiber. The United States is far behind the rest of the world in installing fiber, and that's because we have monopolies that look as a profit motive only. And they do it where it makes sense, and we see that in Caysville. We have a patchwork of fiber available, of higher bandwidth available. In fact, we had many emails from people that said, I can't have a broadband option at my home. I've lived here for 10 years and I can't get any good internet. And I think this solves that problem. Everyone has that access, which I think is great.
Comments? Councilmember?
Dang it.
Too late.
You
Now,
got 3 more items.
You can still ask
You
a
can ask
question.
any of the next 3 items.
May I ask a question? Mother,
yes,
may I, please?
of course you may.
Why is that table there is my first question. It's so confusing. My question, Nick, is it okay, I mean, just to clarify, the number B, or letter B, is going to talk about pending the ballot resolution. By voting for A, how's that related, I guess, to B? Can you explain that to me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I
Still
understand
confused
your
about the
question.
table, but I just want to make sure that we don't need to add that to the action item.
I don't believe you do. A authorizes the city to take out a bond. B authorizes the city to put that on the ballot to build a fiber network. But the only reason you would take out the bond is to build the network.
Okay.
So, and the bond is specific to that use as well. We couldn't take the bond to equip the legal department with a new fleet of cars or something of that nature.
Or build a fire station.
Right. So.
Build a big fire station in a casino. Okay, that answers my question, and I think my comment's going to come on B, so I'm
okay.
good.
If I could just add, Mayor?
But before that, the table?
The table?
The table was for the owl, but I guess we're not using the owl. All right, go ahead.
Thank you.
In the resolution, it actually states as part of the preamble that it is subject to the vote in November. So even if we pass A and don't pass B, A cannot happen without the vote being affirmative.
Good question, though.
Yep. Okay,
Comment?
comment,
Comments,
please.
Tom? Excellent comments. I have, when we get to our next item, I have a few more comments on that. But in speaking with lots of residents the past couple of weeks specifically, and like Tammy said, I mean, I've talked to residents for years about this project, and it's been a really good experience. What I said is my hope is that we look at this with a lot of reality about what this is. We've tried to be completely transparent in what we're doing, what we're going to be purchasing for, what the risk is. I mean, every single thing is laid out there, and it's very transparent. I want to look it square in the face. But I also want to take that same reality and look at what this could bring to our city and what the opportunity that we have before us is. And that is what I think we can really look at and say, this is the chance. I'm glad people took the chance on pressurized irrigation. I'm glad people took the investment on Kaysville's power company. I'm glad there have been people willing to put in the time and the effort and the thousands of hours to invest in the future in the right way. And I know I say it every single week, But I'm glad that we had feedback from our residents. It's made this project so much better. And so thank you to everyone. I hope that you feel part of the process when you go to vote in November. I had somebody say, why are we even talking about this? It's so far away. It will be here before we know it. And we've needed this much time to get informed and to be involved. And so especially I'd encourage everybody to go look at the different breakdowns of, like Councilmember Lort said about the bond parameters. The first time I even looked at a bond was when the previous council was taking one out for Pioneer Park. I just was really paying attention to what things were happening in my city. And we were so excited. There was huge excitement. They had a plan paying for Pioneer Park from impact fee money, but it was a revenue bond backed by sales and franchise taxes. And there's still a risk with that. It's a great benefit to our city, but it taught me about the process of bonding and how we get a parameters, yet we keep the project within those. And I'm really glad that I learned through years of experience of how we do this in a municipal way. So thank you for this opportunity.
Okay. All right, let's vote. Councilmember Lords.
Aye.
Oh, aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Consideration, we're going on to B, consideration for adoption of a resolution providing for a special election to be held on November 3rd, 2020, for the purpose of submitting to qualified electors of Kaysville City, Utah, the city, a proposition regarding the acquisition, construction, owning, and operation by the city of a municipal fiber network, including the financing thereof, providing for the publication of a notice of public hearing, approving the form of and directing the publication of a notice of election and the ballot proposition and related matters. And I think that's it.
It's good.
I think that's it.
It's good.
And whoever makes the motion.
I'm going to make it.
You can just say so, Item B. You can say that. Easier. All right. Okay, and now we are going to go to public comment, and the one person I have signed up for that is Jacob Willoughby.
Which one did Stevenson? Fortunately, I didn't sign up for the rest of them, so this is the last time you have to hear from me. I just really want to talk a little bit more about, now that this, after this is voted down, it will be a ballot item. And so our citizens group, which is supporting this ballot item, is asking people to vote yes. Probably the most common question all of the council members will get is, where do we get these wonderful signs that we start to see in people's yards? And that is at yescaysvillefiber.com. We have a little order form where you can go and get it. We have a mailing list where people can go and join. We also have a Facebook group where people can go and join and support this project. Looking forward to working with the city and continuing to support this and make sure it is successful. I have no worries about the success of this project here in this city, given the support of the survey last year, given all of the work that we've done in the past. I've spoken to Roger Timmerman, who's over Utopia, about fiber projects and how people tend to be really sticky and they want it and they keep it. And so I'm really excited to work with the city, work with the residents, and make this a really positive campaign where people understand, like you said, Councilmember Tran, the ramifications of what we are getting into, but also realize the immense benefits, as Councilmember Lort so eloquently expressed, that this will bring to our city, and especially our children that are growing up now, that are getting an education. What sort of future are they walking into? Are they walking into one that's going to be on the internet and connected? I think unequivocally we can say yes. The question we need to ask ourselves as we approach this vote is, are we going to assure that they are going to have a firm spot in the internet connected world and be able to participate in it? And I look forward to supporting this until November. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Questions?
Are there?
Councilmember Adams?
Well, it just seems like there was, I got a slew of emails that said public comment, and I guess I don't know if we're reading those anymore, or?
No, it is your job to make sure that you read them as council members. Anne Marie, are they submitted as public comment?
No, they're just emails.
They're just emails,
Oh, so
okay.
even though they
Even though
say
it says
public
comment.
comment.
Yeah,
An
okay.
email public comment.
We do have time, though.
The email
We don't traditionally
Yeah.
read comments into the record just because of the voluminous nature of receiving other comments. We encourage people to come, and then the reason that people come here to speak to the item is to let you know how they feel, and I think they've done that in the email.
Yeah, you don't, and one of the things I like to tell residents is whether it's a phone call, an email, or showing up at council, it's all weighted the same. You know, it is your opportunity as a resident of the city to petition your government, and we are representing the government, and it's your right to petition the government. And I think that we have had lots of, we've had open houses, we've had
Town halls.
we've had so many, and whether you agree or disagree with this issue, you can't say that you haven't had the opportunity to speak to it. So, anyway, so we won't go through and read all of those. Although I will ask you specifically, I wanted to hear from Jordan Stevenson, who is a member of our Technical Advisory Committee, and I wanted to hear specifically his comments. Could you read that for us?
Yeah. Awesome, okay. Council, I'm happy to express my voice of support for the Kaysville Fiber project. Internet connectivity has become an essential part of our lives, from kids completing homework to parents working from home. Family movie nights, job searches, and staying informed. We all depend on connectivity. Unfortunately, this essential service has sorely lacked competition and choice for far too long due to the high barrier to entry created by costly infrastructure. The result, compared to other developed countries, the U.S. has ranked among the highest in cost of internet and the lowest in speed. I believe the proven American solution is open, competitive infrastructure that allows free market competition to flourish. Just as open access highways and roads accelerate commerce and progress, open access internet infrastructure provides a much-needed foundation to allow internet service providers to compete in an industry that today is locked down tight by incumbents who refuse to allow third-party use of infrastructure. The benefit of competition through open fiber networks isn't just a theory, and Kaysville would not be the first to attempt it. This has been proven many times by other cities across the nation. I applaud you for your commitment to give residents this choice that will ultimately benefit the inhabitants of Kaysville for decades to come through best-in-class internet service at a competition-driven price. That means low, exclamation point. Jordan Stevenson, Kaysville citizen. Was I 3 minutes?
Good.
Read it
All
again.
right.
Can you time me next time?
Okay. There will be no next time. All right, so that's public comment. Questions on this section? Questions about this, about putting it on the ballot? Any question about putting it on the ballot? Okay, I entertain a motion at this time then.
Did you want to?
But not, I don't have to read the whole thing.
No, you
That's what you're
don't.
saying?
Yes, you do.
Say, I move item B.
I move that we, now I'm just, that we approve action item B
Oh, there you go.
on the packet
All
agenda.
right. It's been moved by Councilmember Adams, seconded by Councilmember Tran. Comments? Councilmember Barber?
I think Any questions? I know we already talked a lot about it, but we actually have our bond counsel that's here. I would love to put on the spot if anybody has some questions for them, and also our legal counsel, finance, and they've been fantastic resources. No cost yet to the city. They've been coming to our late night meetings and calling in. It's actually good to see you guys in person. It's been over Zoom a lot lately, and they're available. And what I want to say, especially on the ballot proposition itself, is, and I know this, I said this before, the idea of putting something on the ballot is a really big undertaking, especially to do it the right way. And so I'm really thankful we've had these experts who have had questions, and they've gone back and forth, and we've iterated and really made sure to do this as, because it's a unique thing to put an entire project on a ballot like this, and including the financing, and they've answered a lot of those questions and had us made sure we knew everything right down to the exact amount on the bond itself. So if anybody has questions, I would love to put them on the spot. Otherwise, they're looking very comfortable sitting back there. But huge thank you for the professional services that you've been rendering in this process. And I think it gives us all confidence in voting for this to go out to all of our residents in a huge election year. So it'll be great.
Yeah. Councilmember Tran.
I just have one question. So I remember you guys talking before, once it becomes a ballot item and we approve or don't approve it, what is the city, what happens then?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Please.
So from a political standpoint, the city is quiet.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
We're not going to use city resources to be advocating for this.
Okay.
There will be a pamphlet that goes up,
Voter information.
voter information, pros and cons, but that's that. If people want to get more information, I direct you to Jacob Willoughby or other community
Well,
members.
the information that's made available.
Yes.
The information we can, yeah.
If you want to do campaigny
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah, we can't take a position for or against
Okay, that's what I
once
just
we've
wanted to make
referred
sure
it,
understood.
but we can answer questions and refer them to sources and ways to get the answer for it. We have to be neutral
Got it.
in the
Okay.
in the
Just wanted to make
proposition.
sure I understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
As a city, individually, we can do all we want.
Councilmember Blackham.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, since it's probably going to be strictly a mail-in ballot, because there probably won't be brick and mortar places you can go vote, I don't know if that's decided yet for sure or not.
I think they're still going to have their drive-through ballot drop-off like they did for the primary.
So, pretty much we'll all receive a mail-in ballot, how many days before?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. When will the voter information card be to people's houses?
So it's scheduled to be prepared by the end of September and sent out
So it
and
should-
published.
At least, it should get there
Before. They should have it a couple weeks
That's what I'm
before.
trying to make sure of, is that
Yeah.
information,
Yeah, our schedule says we want it out before we hold a public meeting on October 1st to talk about the pros and cons. We want that voter information pamphlet published, if not received by all the residents.
okay, and that, they should get that before they
Yeah,
get
they
their ballot.
should. We had a good test case last election. We had a proposition on the ballot, you might remember. And so it was a really similar process. We got that, and if you didn't keep them together, you might have not seen what they were. But the idea is you get it, you're informed, you read, you have time to go to the city, ask your questions, look at the pros and cons, and then you get your ballot that comes. And so that's the process, and I'm really glad that we have that process. And our next thing is going to be for Davis County, but I will also already say they do an excellent job. They get everything out on time. This is a crazy year.
Just
but
don't want anybody coming back and saying, I didn't get my information until after I'd gotten my ballot.
Yeah,
And we're trying to make
Yeah.
sure that doesn't happen.
that should definitely not happen.
Very good. All right. Comments. I think we're on comments.
I think so, too. I'll make
Yes.
a comment. Okay, so my comment has to do with somewhat what Mr. Willoughby?
Yeah.
Yes, I know it's Jake, just didn't know for sure. That Mr. Willoughby made having to do with when we were going out campaigning, I was knocking doors and people were saying, please put this on the ballot, please put this on the ballot. And for me, this is fulfilling that campaign promise. And I also think it's the right thing to do. I feel like it's important to at least make the statement that I don't think it's necessarily a slam dunk, And so it's important that people know that when we're voting yes for this to go to the ballot, it isn't an endorsement from the city council, and I think that we've clarified that right now. We're not trying to tell you which president to vote for, I mean, which nominee to vote for president. We're not trying to tell you how to vote. We're voting to put this on the ballot. Comcast invited me and a few other people to go tour their facility, and they had a lot of valued points, I think, to hear. And I hope that we hear all of that and that each of us can make a decision for ourselves how we vote. I along with Councilmember Tran, or agree with Councilmember Tran, that if this gets approved, I'm 100% in, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that it succeeds. And we'll be, well, probably not the first to sign up, because I'm sure that other people will get ahead of the line of me. But in the meantime, I hope that we can have some really good discussion about it, and so that when we all vote, whether it be yes or no on the ballot, that we vote because we've been informed. That's my comment.
Thank you. Councilmember Lortz.
So like Councilmember Barber, I want to say thank you to the professionals that have helped us. The city staff has been amazing as I've learned a lot of new things about how process works within a city, and learned all the rules around doing a resolution for a proposition on the ballot, and specifically one that I don't think is, as council has told us, has never been done before like this. So we are breaking new ground in that, but we have tried to go above and beyond in making sure we've met every requirement, held every public engagement possible, made sure every fact is disclosed, and that we've discussed everything at least twice in council meeting before we've taken any action. So I'm very grateful that for that experience. I also have to say that for me personally, I was very pleased with our RFP process. I've said it before, but I am just amazed that we have Corning to do the infrastructure. They are a world leader in fiber optics. They produce the fiber cable, the connectors. They know how to design it, how it works. And I just think, we couldn't have asked for a better vendor to do this for us. I am very grateful for the chance to be on this project, although I think my wife would object to that comment, because it's taken a lot of time, but
It started you down a path that you did not see.
But I am very pleased that we've got to this point, because like I've always said, I think that this is a big enough project, the residents need to be behind it. As we've said, if this is the will of the city, of its residents, I think that everybody will get behind it and do it. If it is not, then we'll move on to other matters, and we will make this city the best city it can be. But for me personally, I will take a stand. I think it's a shock to everyone that I think this is the greatest project that we've proposed. But I'm very grateful that we've got this to this point, and just a few more steps, and it's in your hands within 90 days, and then we'll find out where it goes from there.
All right. Okay, Councilmember Blackman.
Go ahead.
What I can say is, this is what you wanted. When we vote for this, this is what you're going to get. So the ball's in your court. Get educated and show up and vote.
Succinct. Well said.
Well said.
Councilmember Tran.
That was well said. I agree with everything. I will say, the question that in my family, we're asking ourselves is, are we going to regret not doing it? We've heard of a lot of cities who have regretted doing it, installing their own fiber lines. But will we regret not doing it, not making this decision to have the city embark on this project? And so I hope that people really carefully consider that question as we move forward, as we make this good decision, an informed decision for the community. That's all I have to say. So again, we're excited to see the outcome of this election. It'll be very interesting.
All right. Councilmember Barber.
Awesome. I think a lot of the question comes to why does the city want to own this network? Obviously, it's going to go out to private companies that we can be your internet service provider. And I have a lot of thoughts on that. I wanted to start with, I'm glad you read our one public comment. I went through briefly and looked. We had 12 other public comments that came in the past week or so in support of the project. We had a couple that came with questions specifically about pricing that we were able to ask. And so thank you to all those. If there we've heard a lot of questions on the project or criticisms, but they didn't come in through public comment this week, and I want that to be known as well. And the key thread that came through all of those public comments that came this week was, I am frustrated. I can't get the service that I want where I'm at, and I need this to compete in work and with my kids at school. And over, how many times did we read that? And so when we ask about where will we be if we don't do this, I was interested to hear a few council members were invited on the Comcast tour. I would have loved to have been invited. But I will say, from what we heard, especially when they were saying, oh, there's people in Kaysville that aren't served, let us know where they are. We'll come there. I'm excited to hear that, and you're welcome. That is what competition and pressure does. And I will go back, I have, emails from 2018 of us sending through Dean saying, we have people in our city that are not being served. We expect you to be out here. And they're still waiting. They're emailing us now and asking for it. And I would love to show, if Comcast would like, I would love to forward you those emails from 2 years ago saying, where have you been? And if we don't take this opportunity, we'll be in the exact same position. And so I'm really excited for it. Other reasons, why do we have it? We sent out a lot of information that was exciting, and we had some pricing on there. And one of the things that we heard from a lot of residents is that they wanted a lower tier service for less money. And so what did we do? We went back and we spoke with our contractors, and we now can offer that lower service, lower rate option that's really competitive with what a lot of people are looking for. That's the benefit we have. We're able to offer a low-income option for those people in the city that need it. That's the benefit of why we're doing it. It's for things like that. It's having that control. So I'm really excited when I have that option. And then finally, about the vote that's coming up, I think it's going to be a great exercise in representation, as Councilmember Adams talked about. Residents that are saying, I wanted to have a voice and I wanted to vote on this, and now they get the chance, and now they get to come learn about it. And we'll still be available to answer questions, and it's a great exercise in representation and democracy. So thanks, everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I would just like to say that, this, can't believe we're finally to this point. I actually talked to my neighbor, Mr. Willard. He's 85 if he's a day, and he's like, I thought when I talked to you about this a year and a half ago that I'd be able to get this service immediately. When are we gonna be able to get this? But he mentioned how grateful he was that there was a lower option, because two 80-year-olds don't need that much bandwidth. Okay. But it's been, what I love about this is it is uniquely Kaysville. It is a uniquely Kaysville project that it's gone through so many iterations and so many, and I have to say that we wouldn't have this project if it wasn't for Councilmember Lortz and Councilmember Barber sacrificing so much time and energy to make sure that it is just right. And they have spent so many hours, along with Ryan Judd, Shane Scott, Dean Story, many others who I could mention, but just making sure that we get this as perfect as we can get it. Nothing's perfect, but as perfect as we can get it. And appreciate the sacrifice that has been made on behalf of the citizens of Kaysville. So I want to give special recognition to these two council members and appreciate that. Okay, that being said, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Tran.
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, let's go to item C. Consideration for approval of an interlocal agreement with Davis County for municipal election services. Shane?
This is actually my item,
All
Mayor,
right.
Mayor Witt, members of the City Council. Thank you. I'll be brief this evening. Basically, this is a interlocal that would allow us to have Davis County, the Davis County Elections Office, put the bond and the decision on the fiber network on the ballot in November. This was outside the scope of our normal interlocal, so we just needed a new interlocal to be able to take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you. I didn't have anybody sign up to speak to this item. Any questions? Councilmember Lortz.
Nick, can you just share with the, for the residents' purposes, how much is that interlocal going to cost for adding this to the election ballot?
I believe Brian McKenzie said it could cost less, he anticipated it'd probably cost less than $1,000. It would depend a little bit on the pagination. If it rolled it onto a second page, it might cost a little bit more, but it was very reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Great. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that we approve the interlocal agreement with Davis County for the municipal election services.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Lortz, seconded by Councilmember Adams. Any comments? All right, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Blackham?
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Item D, consideration for the adoption of a resolution amending the Kaysville City Consolidated Fee Schedule related to the fees for a proposed fiber residential rate. Shane?
Yes, thanks to Dean who put this resolution together. As you know, we every year do a consolidated fee schedule. We set the rates for all of our rates in the city. But at this time, we wanted to do this in a special motion and action item, just in the interest of transparency, just so everybody can see what this might cost if the fiber project is voted favorably in November. So you can see there by the resolution and the attached, I want to say index.
Rate schedule.
Schedule that's there with that. What that will look like for residential purposes, we don't have commercial rates established yet, but I think that can give everybody else a lot of comfort, and at least, as Councilmember Adams articulated very well, just educating yourself, knowing what you're voting for and what you're not. So.
Okay, thank you. Nobody was signed up to speak to this item, so we'll go directly to questions from council. Any questions from council? Okay. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion, we approve action item D.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Blackham, seconded by Councilmember Lortz. Comments at this time? Yes, Councilmember Lortz.
So I know that one of the most frequent questions that has been submitted related to the rates is the confusion around, well, if I pay the fiber, do I still have to go pay Comcast or CenturyLink or some other provider? And so we've tried to make it simple for the residents. The rates that we've published include, and you'll see it in the attachment, I don't know, do we have that where we can jump to it? But in there, we've broken out, there's a fiber fee that is paid to the city of Caysville through your utility bill, and there is an ISP or internet service provider fee that would be paid to whoever you select to provide service to your home. So if that's Xmission, if that's Connext, if it's any one of those things. So those two components make up your total cost, and that total cost is what we've shown then, the total monthly cost. There is no taxes, no additional fees, there's no other hidden costs, no connection fee, no equipment fee, other things like that. So that's the most frequent question I've got asked is, you know, the rates look great, but what else do I have to pay for? And we want to make sure people know we've tried to put it all into one rate, that here's what you're going to pay. It includes everything you need to have your home connected. The only thing that is not included is a Wi-Fi router. You can use your own, you can buy a recommended one, and some providers may offer a lease or rental unit if you want to do that, but that'll be up to you and choice. So I think that, one of the greatest things that we're talking about here is this project and these rates, it's all controlled by the residents. And the thing that we've talked about, as soon as the bond is paid off, that fiber fee drops. And you'll see that at the bottom there, it goes to $3, and all of a sudden, instead of paying, $40 to $240, it drops to $25 to $218. And so that's the thing. The more people, if everybody gets on board with this, those lower rates come quicker. Everybody will get those faster, and so it's kind of a self-fulfilling thing, If we want the bond if we want to have the project fail and not be able to pay the bond, people run away. If people want this to succeed, they jump on board. It's going to be successful for everybody that much sooner.
I have a question.
All right.
Is this question time or comment time?
It's comment, but
you can
go
ask.
ahead.
Oh, I just have a question. So I was talking to my husband about this, and he said, okay, these are great rates, it's cheaper than we're paying. How long are these rates guaranteed? And I know we've had discussions over this, but I thought we might as well put that out there so that everyone understands.
So as I've been chided many times for making absolutes, there is no guarantee in life except death. And maybe taxes.
And taxes, yeah.
Maybe taxes. But we have nothing that says that we will need to change these rates in the near term. So from my perspective, the project is intended to grow and build for the first 3 or 4 years, and we don't anticipate the rates changing within that cycle. Now, if we don't have enough subscribers, we've talked about one of the options available to the city is to increase the fiber fee to cover the bond cost. And, if we raised it from $25 to $30, which is the fee that Utopia charges, then that would drop the self-sustaining level to about 3,000 or less. And that we already know from last year's survey, we have 3,000 homes that are interested. And so that may happen if that's all the people that join. But if more people than that join, we don't see a reason that rates will go up. In fact, generally, the connection fees, the ISP fees have been dropping in the past. Connectivity costs have dropped as we've gone forward, just like computer costs drop. And so we expect that that will happen. Obviously, the bond is a fixed rate. The ops and maintenance is guaranteed for 5 years not to change. So those two components, which make up the majority of the cost, have no escalation in them for 5 years. So I can't guarantee it, but I don't anticipate. I think rates will go down, not up, and as more people join, the faster rates will go down.
Thanks. His question was mostly just because it'll probably take a couple years to build out the whole city, right? And so...
Actually not.
It'll be faster than
24
okay.
months, yeah.
So in recent conversations, Corning has said that they believe they can have the network built in 14 months.
Wow.
By December of 2021. It will be fully complete and operational. Connext, who is doing the home connections, given that information, has said they now need to figure out a plan of how can they get 4,500 people connected in 14 months. And so we are working hard to do it as quickly as we can because we know that those that want it yesterday. And so now we don't know that that plan is going to all play out, but they're working towards trying to make that a reality.
Councilmember Adams.
Is Connext also an ISP provider?
Yes, they will both be the operator and an internet service provider on the network. And the reason that we
So that was why I was confusing. I thought for some reason, I thought originally it was going to be like you could choose between X-Mission and all these different.
Yes, you will. We have talked with several, and we will be talking with more ISPs about joining the network. Connext is the only one that we have an agreement right now to be a provider, but we will have others join.
Okay, so if the internet went down, who do you call? Do you call Connext?
You're going to call your ISP, whoever provides your service. And so here's the great thing.
All the ISPs are going to have connection to our boxes?
Here's the great thing that with being able to do this project and the things we've learned and been able to do, we are planning to use an auto-provisioning software package. That means that nobody has to go to a hut to change or configure anything. When you say, I want a gigabit service, That order goes into the system, and the system communicates to the switch and says, give this port a gigabit service, it's on and done. If you say, I want to drop to 250 or I want to go up, it'll automatically make that change. With that system, we can also give every ISP connectivity through the ports and to the modems of their subscribers. So they'll be able to see everybody that they have service with all the way to their home. And if that connection drops, they'll be notified that I can't communicate with this ISP address anymore. And then they can either contact the person and try to troubleshoot it, or they'll be able to see if it's a break on the network. Now, if they can't solve it and it's a break on the network, they would contact Connext as the operator to go out and fix the network break. But if it's a home connection problem, then the ISP will work with the homeowner on that.
So as the operator, Connext probably is going to have to receive money from the ISP as access their connector, is what I'm saying. So if a line gets cut, Connext is the one that's going to be responsible.
Yeah, if somebody,
if it's
construction
cut.
breaks our line, then Connext would go out and fix that. Yes.
For how long? I mean, they're just.
As long as they're the operator.
There'll always be an operator.
Yeah, and we're working through the service, requirements and stuff, so.
Weeds, and the weeds.
Oh, we can go to the weeds. You want to go to the weeds, I go to the weeds.
This is true. But back to this item here. All right.
One other
Yes,
comment
go
I want to
ahead.
say on that is there's actually a new page on the new Kaysville Fiber website, newkaysvillefiber.com/construction, and it has pictures about what you can anticipate on the construction process, and also kind of what you can see after they install to your home. And like on Councilmember Lortz was saying about the modem being included, they hook up to your Wi-Fi router. Before they leave their home, they do a speed test, they make sure you're up and running, your devices are connected, so that you have a really great experience. So you're up and running, you're working, going to school, whatever it takes, right when you get installed. And that's when you also start paying, is right when you have it at your home.
Okay. That's comments. All right, we're going to go to a vote now, because we had it motioned and seconded. This is item D, and I think we're to Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. All right, I think that's all the fiber ones. Now we are moving to approval of an update to the Kaysville City Traffic Calming Policy, and we have Josh Belknap to present. And thank you for wearing a Kaysville City shirt.
You are welcome.
Awesome.
I would have preferred the orange vest that you wore on the interview lately.
I think I
That
would
was
also
nice.
prefer the vest
orange
and
vest.
my boots. So yeah, I guess I don't get to talk about fiber, and that's okay. But thank you for letting me be here, Mayor and Council. As you guys have seen in the packet, we are proposing some changes to the current traffic calming policy. And this is on a similar vein to a discussion that was held in a council meeting last month that Councilmember Adams had touched on. Kaysville has a policy. It was adopted in 2015. I am embarrassed to say this, but I didn't know that it existed when I started until a question or a concern came up, and luckily somebody was able to point out to me that it existed in the first place. After spending the last 4 years working with the police department to administer the policy and the process, the police department and myself and some of the other individuals within staff identified opportunities to either simplify or make adjustments to that plan, and that's what you see before you is a more, I think, a clearer, easier to understand opportunity for people that feel there may be an issue somewhere to adjust or to address traffic volumes and speeds. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it back over to the council if you have any questions.
Okay. All right, any questions on the reformed traffic calming policy?
No
Okay.
comments on it, I guess. huh?
Okay, all
Nobody signed up
right.
to comment?
Okay, yes, nobody has signed up to comment on this, so.
Maybe it would be helpful to kind of outline the process.
That's what I was going to say,
Yes,
that was
that
going
would
to be
be
my,
great.
just if you
Essentially, the policy exists to do a couple of things. One, it's to provide a formal process for us to kind of log and track questions or complaints or concerns about areas. And the police department, the traffic division, which is one officer, is kind of the point of contact initially for this policy. And it gives a resident the ability of, hey, I'm seeing something on my street, and I'm not quite sure if there's an issue or not. Well, let's start the process. And it not only provides the ability to log and track that, but it gives the ability to involve the resident in some of the information that we're going to collect, some of the information that we're going to analyze to see, is there an issue, is there not an issue, what are the reasons why, and if there are recommended changes, what those might be to try and address a potential issue. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The police department is that first point of contact. Data is collected on speeds and volumes, and then there is a period where we're analyzing that data. We're looking at the AASHTO Green Book, we're looking at the MUTCD, and looking at some of these established traffic engineering guidelines, as well as police department just looking at it, boots on the ground, to see what is really going on here. Sometimes that may mean that there isn't an issue, and sometimes it may mean that there is an issue, and we'll work internally and also work with consultants if necessary to see what those recommendations might be.
Okay. Councilmember Lortz?
So how can people find the traffic calming process simply and easily?
Yeah, so currently it's on a page on the city website.
If they just go to the front page and search for traffic, will it come up?
If you type in traffic calming policy,
calming?
it'll come up with a result there. It'll take you right to the page on the website where you can download what you see before you hear, the information, as well as the application that comes with it. And like I mentioned, it does have some resident involvement.
I just know when we had some of these rezonings, and I got questions saying like, how do we get a stop sign? How do we get, something to try to slow down traffic and cut throughs and that?
So that's one way that they can find it. The other way that I think is most commonly used by residents is reaching out to the police department or to Public Works, and we'll direct or send them a copy directly to those locations, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Tran?
I was just going to say, I really appreciate being able to reach out to you when I've had a couple of people recently ask
Yeah,
about this
absolutely.
and how to get, a speed sign or something in their neighborhood. So I appreciate you doing that and looking at this. And a question for staff. I wouldn't know to search traffic calming.
Yeah.
So could we just search traffic?
Yeah.
Can we change that?
I think it's also on the police
Is
page
it?
as
Okay,
well,
I don't
but we
think-
can do that, yeah.
Okay, because I don't know that people know to
Right.
look at the
Well,
police.
Yeah.
And they
website.
would come to you.
Well, right, and they've asked me, and I didn't know that I could do that,
And-
so I appreciate the
Yeah.
information.
Yeah,
but-
for sure.
So, yeah. Councilmember Adams?
Yeah, the same as Councilmember Tran. I've had a lot of people come to me, and I wonder, and I hate to give you extra work, but just a small, but I wonder, in addition to this, because when you went through the sort of the step-by-step the other day with me, I was so impressed, because for me, what it does is it puts a lot of skin in the game for the person who's claiming there's a problem. They have to go to get some neighbor signatures, they have to count vehicles, And I love that because then at least they get, but the one thing that I think is missing in this is almost like a checklist of A through F, right? Like first you do this, second we do this, third we do this. And that would be beneficial for me if I were a resident looking at the traffic calming policy, to be able to see like, okay, so first I have to go out and fill out this request for the calming, then it's going to go here, then it's going to go here, and then it's going to go here, so that at least they know where, and they may very well be able to depict that out of the 5 pages, but I would just think more like a checklist would be something that'd be a lot easier to see. Is that, I don't know, Shane, you took off your mask, so
I
you're going to talk.
Is that all right?
Yes, of course.
I think, like I was probably just going to say what you just said, is it's probably all in there, but there's no reason why we couldn't make it a one-page checklist.
I think perhaps maybe the easiest thing to do is you get to the application, I think we could make some changes to the application itself, because it kind of exists as a pseudo checklist.
Yeah.
Here's the things that you need to provide. But I think if we provided maybe more of a bullet point summary of
Here's what's
the
gonna happen
process.
after.
You do A, B, C, and then D, E, F, follow that, and then put your information in. I think something like that would be
So
very
they can
easy.
see start to finish where it's going to go as soon as they start filling these things out, after they've
Right.
done that part, where it's headed and where it's going to be in that process. Anyway, not to give you extra work,
No,
but
I think that's very easy.
cool.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Blackham.
I like John's suggestion, but, I mean, I like your suggestion. I think that would work well with this, but if you compared this to the last one, did you read them both? I read them both. I read the old one, I read
Yeah.
this one, and I thought, if I was a citizen complaining about traffic and I got that thing, I'd just get madder.
Right.
You know,
Well, that's my
it was
point.
so
Like, I still think it's great,
Yeah.
but
But I like what you're saying, though,
Yeah.
because, you know, you get a document like this, you just,
it's overwhelming.
yeah, and to get A through B, but if you'd have got the old document, you just got mad and called Josh.
Yeah.
So, I really like the way it condensed it, made it so much simpler for citizens to, you know, like you say, they put skin in the game. I like your idea, let's get the bullet points, make it make it a simplified
So they don't have to
process.
call, they could just look at it and be like,
Go
oh.
through, that's what I gotta
Here's
do,
what I
and I
do,
gotta get it to
yeah.
them, and then they'll go from there, and, but if they would have had the old one. That was frustrating.
Yeah, I would echo that frustration myself trying to administer that, so.
Okay. All right. Can't remember. Did we have
Get
a
a
motion?
motion? No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the updated traffic calming policy.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Adams, seconded by Councilmember Tran.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this isn't kosher
Yes.
maybe, but does that,
How dare you?
does that motion need to include the
you need to
instruction?
include
Sure.
Change.
I'll second, or edit my motion.
Just do a new one.
I'll make a motion that we approve the updated traffic calming policy with the addition of a bullet point,
Step by step.
step-by-step, from A to Z, not necessarily having to be A through Z.
I will come up with.
Are you getting all this?
23 extra bullet points.
Additional bullet points, so that citizens can see very clearly what they have to do to help mitigate.
Sorry.
Calming.
Wow.
Tim, you get a second?
Someone hurry and second it.
Second. All right. Okay.
Can you repeat it?
Very well.
Sorry about that. Way to go.
All right. Okay, let's go to a vote. Unless we have comments.
I do have my one last comment, is that I love making it better, and I already talked to some of the staff about this. I love the better document. I'm excited to put it in a more accessible place online. I also think we can make it a form online, because no one downloads things anymore and prints them. And so the better we can make this more streamlined process, the better. So that will be my commitment.
This is my, my shameless plug with one of the requests we made with CARES Act funding. Would would allow us to do that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
To put that online.
Absolutely.
So
How do
And I
you
can
get
help.
signatures?
It's quite, what's that?
Do you still get signatures from your neighbors?
Yeah.
For an online.
You just scan them and
Scan
send it
them,
in. and-
okay.
Yeah.
Scan.
And we'll have it available if people don't want to. I mean, we'll make it very accessible, but it's just nice to have things, because then they're easily traced too. It's so much easier to find it that way.
Very good.
I
Okay.
didn't know that about your CARES Act. I think
All
we're
right,
on the
y'all
same
good?
wavelength.
Thank you, Ryan Judd.
He's,
Yeah.
well, he's awesome.
He's the man.
Very good.
And Jordan. Jordan.
And
Hanson.
that's,
Jordan.
Jordan is, yeah.
He's also the man.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? No. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Consideration of a commitment to contribute to a stormwater retention facility. Lyle.
Thank you, Mayor. So this project just south of Boondocks, between Desert Drive and I-15, we've been working with the developer on the development of the site for some time with commercial and also residential components to it. And a unique feature about this property is that for many, many, many years, it's remained vacant and horses been on it, or anyway, no buildings. And it's been beneficial to the city because much of our stormwater system that exists east of I-15, pretty much the area between the ponds and 200 North, collects, funnels under I-15, and dumps out onto the site. Hasn't bothered anybody at this point because of how it's used, but there is a lot of extra water that comes here. And now that the site is being considered for development and projects are imminent, system's got to be improved for the collection of that so that it can be retained appropriately and put back into our system at an appropriate rate. So the developer of that project has provided cost to the city and a design of a system that would collect and then relay that back into our main primary stormwater system. And review with that, and our public works and consulting engineer, we've told people for years when they've been looking at this property, you know, here's what you need to know about if you're considering development. By the way, a lot of extra water there will probably help you out with that to be considered. So time here is to consider that. It's roughly a $250,000 facility. As we've looked at it, and what the developer would normally be responsible for is they have to retain water anyway for their own purposes. It was our determination that the city share is roughly $63,000. The specific numbers there in your packet, and where I'm away from my computer, I'm just guessing there a little bit, but within a few $100s, it's that number there. We don't have a specific and formal agreement in front of you. We've been talking about this for a while and have been preparing to do it through an incentive agreement, among other items that we've previously discussed. But recently, the developer, they're ready to go and pull the trigger on some of the construction on this, and this particular project has needed to have something put together, and we determined it's probably more fair, whatever occurs on the site, that's still that excess water that we would be responsible for. So we're asking the council for approval to complete and enter into a formal agreement with the developer. It would be a reimbursement, so we'd have them build it, we would inspect it, make sure it accomplishes what it was designed to do and that it meets our standards, and then reimburse up to the amount in your packet. I think with that, I'll take questions.
I have a question.
Councilmember Glackman.
Okay, so in most of the time, in most developments, like in the case of this piece, we don't own the property. Granted, there is some storm water that goes through there, but that's kind of the way things have been that way, you know. They came through an open ditch and they went across the property. And as the developer came in and bought the property and developed, it was at their cost to pipe ditches, whether they were irrigation ditches, storm drain, whatever. And I'm not disagreeing that there's some value engineering here. And, but the one thing I want to make sure of, I mean, if this is strictly residential, then that's something we really never have participated in. But we've talked about some incentive for commercial here. And so I want to make sure that if we're going to pay into this, that it gets counted as incentive for commercial development on this property. And so it kind of locks it in to commercial only ever. And so, that's where I'm a little bit confused that, we're contributing into something that normally we just don't really contribute into because we don't own the property. It's water that comes under the freeway and opened up. It's always done that. And as land has done that in West Kaysville forever, as the developer developed it, they piped it. I just want to make sure if we're paying into this, that we're getting some benefit as far as saying we're contributing to this commercial property in this way as an incentive for commercial property. If not, then I don't see the need for Kaysville to participate, because normally we would not.
And just to refresh people's memories, this is the property just south of Boondocks, and it is currently zoned commercial and residential. So, yeah, this whole property, it is commercial. It's going to benefit commercial property and residential, but, so you want it specifically called out that this is an incentive?
I
That's what you're
definitely
saying.
want it to be an incentive and not just a participation in doing a storm drain, because that would open the door to any time anybody developed anywhere and there was water running across their property, Kaysville City now has to participate in piping something that we've never done in the past.
Maybe.
Okay, council, well, first, Shane, what do you think?
My recollection of our conversations, and we probably loop in Mr. Belknap, but that wasn't, our intent was not to do this as a favor or as any sort of incentive. I think that the conversations we had focused on, do we have an obligation to do this here? In my mind, I made a similar connection between what we've done down there on the ponds that are privately owned down around Angel Street, just south of Smith Lane, that we are contributing to a system there that we don't own, that isn't ours, but I think the way this was sold, I guess that sounds like a bad word, but what's sold to me was that we are contributing to the problem here, and that a lot of this water isn't the property owners, it's the cities. It had already been in the city system beforehand. And if I'm incorrect in that assertion, tell me.
And actually, Josh, if you could come forward. Just a recap of our stormwater system in Kaysville, and should this be classified as part of our stormwater system?
So as I initially had looked at this, my feelings had been kind of similar, that water has always gone through here, and you're coming in and you're changing that, and so that onus should be on the developer. But as we looked at it further, as you can see up here on the map, there's a significant area that's south of 200 North. It goes north of this map, west of 50 West, and north of, I think, this point here that ends up coming through this property. As we had initially looked at it, we could probably straight pipe this through and accomplish the purposes of the development still, but we would be losing some de facto detention that we've received, water detention, as it was in an open ditch. If there was a higher volume of water, as it was constrained in the pipe downstream as it reached Deseret, and that pipe couldn't handle more water, it would back up and fill up within the banks of the ditch. And that was the point where I think I changed my opinion as the developer initially proposed an agreement with us, and we went through that. Like Lyle said, I think it was $250,000, and I think they were looking at maybe trying to split that, whether it's 50/50, but we went through line by line and identified that these aren't items that have to do with the city's system upstream impacting the function of this site and losing detention or having detention. So yeah, the city's system is we collect stormwater, we convey stormwater to the nearest public water body. And we've been doing that, collecting this and passing it through this site. The one thing that kind of changed my feeling and opinion was there has been detention that probably wasn't ever intended or installed that we would be losing, and we'd want to keep that detention, with some of that detention cost still falling on the developer and us splitting or bearing some of that cost with them.
Yeah, Shane?
I apologize if Lyle said this while I was stepped out, but one other exciting thing about impact fees is that a really good use of them is to take a developer that's doing a pipe, and we bring in impact fees where we can ask them to upsize that to accommodate this kind of thing. So that's another thing that made sense to me as we were discussing it, is using impact fee money in our in our stormwater system to upsize this pipe to accommodate our water and his water at the same
Then
time.
a question for you then, if you're using impact fees for that, would you not have to have declared that as a project in your impact fee study?
Well, I think you don't need to get so specific that you call out a single pipe as a project. I think you do need to talk about the number of homes you're serving and a general, and you know, I'd maybe defer that to Dean a little bit, what actually constitutes the requirement there. But my understanding is that you need to call out how much stormwater you need to accommodate and where you need to take it from, and maybe new developments in your system that are coming. I would also wonder if this project wasn't at least on our radar. Internally, it has been. I don't know if it was in the impact fee analysis.
Who maintains this facility then, once it's done? Does it fall under?
So it would be maintained by the developer or the owner of the property after that, as part of a maintenance agreement. We require that for all facilities on private property. So if it's not in city property or in city right-of-way, and there's a document that the state requires us to execute with a property owner to make sure that that is monitored, maintained, and continues to function.
Okay, and the 65,000, where'd that number come from? Just, I mean, I know it's from the project, but does it represent a percentage? Or?
I believe what we did was go through line by line by line, and we have nothing to do with this item. We do have something to do with this item, and figuring out just by the proposal that they had submitted of, we feel like this is our responsibility to the tune of a certain dollar amount. So it was using that cost estimate.
Okay. Councilmember Adams?
Does that, with where we're contributing money, do we have say in what types of things are put into, because, you know, I know that came up recently, right, with the home that they were talking about. There's the Cadillac version,
Yeah.
and the, you know, I mean, we're putting in some skin in the game. Do we have a decision on what type of system is put in?
Correct, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
The two mechanisms that we have, first is the city construction standards. So it would have to be built to meet those minimum requirements, but then also going through final plat review and going through the construction drawing review process, providing feedback through that process of this is a change that we want to see made. And we've done that with the developer to kind of change the layout as well as the infrastructure involved and the types of materials used.
Okay. Council, Council.
No, go ahead. You have
Barber.
This is kind of a comment, but I'll say it because I have a question too. But I remember when we looked at this project, not the most recent developer that put it under contract, but before then, that was a huge question that came before our last council, was that they went on the site and there was water everywhere, and they I think Josh either came or responded to an email, I can't remember, it was a couple of years ago, and said, no, this is the city's water. Like, this is actually our spot. We knew that eventually this would get developed, and so we would have to work on it when that time came. We didn't really get further beyond that. We just said, when it gets to that point, we will have to work on it. So I'm not surprised to see this. I think it's appropriate of the city to be involved. I actually think impact fees are a great use here, because we can show there is new growth all over the city and right in the specific location. So that would be great to use that funds.
Okay. All right.
Well, my only question was, okay, so what if the city says, no, we're not going to do this? Then does the development not happen? What happens at that point?
Nick has a thought on that.
Nick?
So the difference here is this is a regional detention site. So when the developer develops a project, they have to retain the water that's on their parcel. But if the city and what's happened here is the city said, we'd like to use part of this area not only for your development, but for system-wide improvements. When that happens, then the developer's allowed to request a payback for the difference between whatever the minimum standard they would have to install and what we're requiring them to install. Otherwise, the last person to develop gets stuck with a huge detention pond on their parcel and one lot that they can sell, and everybody upstream reaps the benefit of that. So this is pretty common in large developments like this, that the city will take advantage of the space and use what was going to be a detention pond and upsize that to a regional detention pond like's going to happen here. And what's nice is it's kind of a win-win for both parties, because to upsize a detention pond, you don't have to build double the land space to have double the detention.
Okay.
So, is that?
Well, we have an approved development agreement, right?
Yes.
So I just wondering, what's the percentage of commercial? Do you know, just right off the top? I can't remember.
Yeah, within the development agreement, I don't know the specifics to the amount, but I know there's a limited number and a cap on how much residential they could do, to the tune of 60 or so units. Right now, they have a final plat approval for approximately 40 on the far south end. The rest of the property is zoned, it's in an LI zoning designation for commercial use. And I want to say the limitations are something in the realm of 50-50, that at least 50% of it had to be developed for commercial purposes. They had been working on two very specific users that the council's been made aware of in the past, and unfortunately, due to COVID, I think that those, I'm not positive those are going to move forward. I think to Councilmember Black, my thinking was exactly, I think where he was at, in that I'd been aware of this for a long time and kind of know what was out there, and I thought it could be used as, at least from my perspective, something we might have to do anyway, so maybe that differs a little bit. But it might as well be tied to an incentive, and let's get what we want out of the property. But I think at this point, we're thinking it's probably ours anyway, whatever happens with it, and they're ready to build it, is staff's perspective.
I guess I'm a little concerned that the properties to the north, and maybe Josh could speak more on that, but I believe Boondocks had to do the very exact same thing, and they didn't get anything from the city, and I think so did Salmon and Alder that's next to that. And I know we did some things for them, we got some credit for that, but I also think they had to move some pipes and do some stuff, and I'm not sure.
Okay, time. There is something wrong with these microphones. I'm good. Yeah.
Does that work?
Two of them are too close together, that's fine.
Yeah.
Move one of those.
What was going on? Throw it on the ground.
Some feedback.
So yeah, Boondocks did have to add a piping network of their own, essentially. And what the city did was they installed, as a city project with city materials, and I think they hired a contractor to do that, was install some of the piping in the front that would run farther north in front of Boondocks. And I don't know if it extended in front of the Salmon property or if it stopped right at this property line there. But I think that was the city's contribution, from my understanding, was installing a location for them to discharge into, an extension of a line that had already existed. And in fact, I think the city project may have come farther down here as well. We looked at the boondocks drawings with the developer and with Andy a year or more ago, and identified that there was a city project undertaken there on Deseret, so. And with the salmon property, we didn't have, I don't think the city did anything there as a city project with the stormwater specifically.
Didn't they have to move a sewer? I think they moved the sewer.
There was an old abandoned, kind of a flow meter that the sewer had back here, and that was removed. I don't know the details on that.
Assuming, and forgive my, yes. I don't have a lot of knowledge as far as stormwater goes, but if we didn't contribute and they just kept the water there, we don't get, I mean, we're gaining, right? Because we want that water, is what someone's saying. I mean, we lose money, right, not having that water, or?
We lose the ability to detain that water, so in a high water event, if they just pipe this straight through, instead of the choke point being right here, where water would back up, like you see in Lake Fiesta, at the choke point, there's too much water going in, and so it has a location for it to kind of spread out until water subsides and it can go into the pipe and move west. We would lose that, and that choke point would move from here up to here where it comes under I-15, and if there was enough water, it would back up towards the railroad tracks or the freeway. If there's room, I don't know.
Councilmember Blackham.
I mean, I really see the value engineering in this. I don't disagree with that, but I still believe there's some incentive there that we should be getting for this.
How can we give incentive to somebody that hasn't come, that isn't coming yet? Do we just
the person, and somebody will come eventually. The person that was coming, that was the first thing out of their mouth, basically, is what can you do for us to come to Caysville?
Right.
I'm saying we can help you with your storm drain. We're going to contribute this much money. Yes, we could just have you pipe it through, but we can see some benefit here, so we'll help upsize the pipe, make a bigger detention pond, but it's making it better for everybody, not just us, you too. You know, so you don't have the opportunity to maybe flood out your residence. We'll make a bigger detention pond. And I think there needs to be something shown that we get a little credit for this, is what I'm asking.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Adams.
So I mean, I get where you're coming from. I'm just thinking, as they would think, like, yeah, but you've already done that, right? Because they want to do it now, right? The developer wants to do it now. It's not something that, I mean, maybe we could right now have it be that when the business comes in, that they're going to be responsible for that, so that down the road we can hope they didn't listen to this council meeting and we can give it to them as a credit. I mean, I'm just trying to think how you could actually have it be a credit when it's already been done. It's like, I don't know how you could write that in.
And we've already done the development agreement, and I think that.
I like what you're saying though, Mike. I just don't know how you do it. How do you do it?
It's already a win-win, right?
Yeah, you've just seen so many projects where they've been, and I don't know, I mean, we've done a lot of things, Josh, haven't we, a lot of work to make sure that the ponds on east of I-15 can take a lot more water than they used to, and so we don't have the problems that we had down here in the past. So, you know, there's always the question, does it have to be done? I agree that it should be done, because it does add some value engineering, but does it absolutely have to be done? But to do it, it makes the system better for everybody, including, because we don't know how much impervious surface they're going to have on that commercial property. I mean, literally, they only have to have 10% landscape, so they could have tons of impervious area, and that bigger detention can really be a benefit to them also. And so, just, really
I
want to get some credit
So,
for.
okay, so if I understand you correctly, you just want it indicated somewhere that this is an incentive.
Yes.
That is all you're asking for.
And I think to that point,
Okay, Councilmember Barber.
I mean, we've done it in business incentives in the past, and really it's to incentivize businesses to come, because business is great. We all like to support them, have them in our community. How I'm looking at this is, even if it's not a line item business incentive, it's making sure they're not de-incentivized to not come here, because it's going to cost them that much more money, and it possibly could cause big problems in their development. So if there's somewhere we can put it, let it be known, but we're also doing the most prudent thing for the entire city, and we're making sure this development comes in, which is a good development. I think we all were excited about it. It looks good, making sure it comes. So if Shane has a great idea how to make sure we get a line item for an incentive, I don't know that that's in the purview of what we're doing right now.
I would expect that the developer of the property, if
gonna
they
use
didn't
it as a selling
exact
point.
more out of them and change what they're already required to do within the agreement, be happy to have that in the reimbursement agreement. Just to acknowledge the purpose behind it, I'd be happy to
So how
craft it that way.
say that again, how would that work?
So if it doesn't require anything different of them that the
okay.
development agreement already has, it can be acknowledged in the agreement we create with them.
And they do have to come
I believe
back.
they'd be happy to see that.
They have to come back. I mean, we saw it the first time, but they'll be coming back for their final.
Depending on what they're up to with the rest of the ground,
I
they
just
may be
think
back.
there's things changing from what we've heard, but.
All right.
There's a likelihood based on, recent events and unfortunately the markets that we may see some differences.
Yeah.
And so I think there are multiple chances, if that is the intent, and I've been hoping to use it as a carrot kind of all along personally. I think we can find ways to acknowledge it as such.
Well, like I said, I think you can, based on, we've done some really good upgrades to the storm drain system, and you could questionably say, does it have to be done? I think Josh, by doing it, is doing his job, saying this is another safety feature that we need to do. It's good money spent, and it makes it so that if a commercial developer does come in there and has enough impervious area, they don't have to worry about flooding, really.
Yeah.
It's
That's
an
nice.
incentive in my mind, it's an incentive
Huge
to
win,
them. So, anyway.
Okay, so I'm trying in my mind to construct a motion on how to, is it enough to let it be known that as they come back, if we could please write it in somehow, some way?
I hope you kind of understand what I'm trying to
Yes, I do.
say.
That's a good idea.
I understand. So, and it's a good thought. All right. So back to you guys. Any further questions? Okay, so that being said, would somebody like to take a stab at a motion?
I'll take a stab.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the consideration of a commitment to contribute to a stormwater retention facility as an incentive to the developer of the property.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Blackham. Any further comments? Okay.
I'm
let's go-
watching Shane and Nick.
I think it's good.
Okay.
I thought so too. Thanks.
all right.
I was pretty proud of that.
Okay, let's go to vote. Councilmember Lords.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, we are moving on to our work items. Budget discussion. Dean. Do we want to take, seriously, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Or 1 minute.
5 minute recess. Well, or one. Okay, thank you.
I was, when I'm at home listening, most of the time I'm usually like doing the dishes or like have some out, so it's a little interesting.
Hey, Councilmember Adams. You're having too much fun.
Chatty Kathy over there.
Sorry.
All right. Okay, we're going to get on with our budget discussion. Dean, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a follow-up related to our discussion earlier this evening on when it might be appropriate to make some changes to the current budget that we adopted and the timing. And so I've given you a handout, just 2 pages, and I won't be long on this. I think we'll just do a quick overview of maybe some items to pay attention to. These are preliminary numbers, and it's only general fund, because general fund is probably the fund that is most impacted with the circumstances we're under with the COVID-19. So this is preliminary and an overview, but these are the general classifications of revenues in the general fund, and you can see the budget number, the actual number, and the variance. The first one, obviously, is the variance in taxes, and that is related to sales tax. I think it tells us 2 things. It tells us, number one, maybe we underestimated what the potential was in sales tax, and number 2, we did much better during March, April, May than we thought we would, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. The other categories are pretty much in line. You'll notice under intergovernmental, there's an increase there, and that is related to some of the grants that we've received over the last couple months, related to the attorney and related to police services. So you'll see an increase there. Under charges for services, there's a decrease there, and that is primarily due to a decrease in revenue in recreation. We've essentially shut down recreation March, April, May, and June, and it's also reflected on the expenditure side. So anyway, revenues are $645,000 over budget, so I would consider these kind of one-time monies, because they're over budget. It's something that will roll over into our fund balance and available to us. Under expenditures, you can see the variances there. The public safety is related to the police officers that we did a mid-year adjustment on to hire 3 officers, and then the additional 4th officer through a grant program. The other general areas are pretty generic, I guess is the word. Buildings, parks, and recreations, 362,000 variance. And again, that is because those programs were shut down. So these would not be necessarily ongoing revenues that would become available next year, because they would be spent. Anyway, revenues over expenditures, about $1 million that will roll over into fund balance at the end of the year. The question was asked earlier today from Andre whether that would affect our threshold. Potentially it could. We haven't determined that yet, but I really think under the circumstances we'll get a pass on retaining some money through the end of the year. So that's the first thing we wanted to share with you. Any questions on that? Okay. Now we'll go to sales tax, and we'll kind of identify this first group is total sales tax revenue by month, by fiscal year. So you can see in fiscal year FY19 about $4.9 million. FY20 is going to be close to about $5.4 million. This last one here in June is an estimate. We don't have June's numbers yet, so we just used the previous month's numbers. Trying to think what else I need to say there. You can see the increase year over year, so FY '20, we had a great year in sales tax, and I think looking at our makeup of businesses, I think the city businesses really came through during this period. Well, it'll show down here. Maybe let's go down here. So if you look at, this is point of sale. So this includes the collection of businesses within Caysville. So a pretty good increase. The grocery stores did well, the hardware stores did well. Our RV sales did real well in May, not so well in March and April, but did well in May. We've got a healthcare facility that sells healthcare products, did well. So you can see Kaysville businesses did well under the circumstances. Go down and look at the portion of population, and this is where most cities are facing issues here. They're not receiving as much population distribution as they would think. So it's fairly flat when you look at the population distribution. Point of sale is an increase.
Can you explain what population distribution means, Dean?
So the local option sales tax is 1%. Of that 1%, half of it stays at point of sale, stays in Kaysville. The other half of it goes to the tax commission to distribute across the state based on the city's populations.
Oh, got it, okay.
So we're, I don't know what we are, maybe 9% of the total state population, something like that.
So will you explain the total sales? So that's from the whole state of Utah, all the sales tax, and then it's divided up by population?
Exactly. Yeah, the bottom schedule.
And I know this is kind of a diversion, but the way that the state does this allows small towns to stay afloat, you know? And so I think it's a really good
Well, it means
thing.
that, you know, when Farmington goes and builds a big, huge commercial or
Right.
you know, retail
We benefit.
center, and everybody goes down there, we still get some benefit out of
Our
that
residents
retail
are
sales.
there.
Yeah, not too many years ago, the formula was 75% point of sale, 25% population. So there was a lot of competing for sales tax
Right.
businesses.
And what happens?
More so.
Yeah, if the sales tax stays within the municipality, then there's warring development, right? So this seems to be a good way to do it.
Benefits Kaysville really well.
Yeah.
We're able
Yes,
to-
Shane?
Dean, the population, the local, sorry, what's the word? The
Local option.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, because I thought we would do well just with the makeup of our community, the point of sale distribution. But the population distribution, I thought we would be much more impacted there. And just being flat is a great thing. Do you have any, I'm trying to think back of the various meetings I've been in. I know that we feel a little insulated in Utah generally, but we do have a lot of tourism, we do have a lot of things that have been impacted statewide. Do you have a thought of why that wasn't maybe more negative than it is?
I really don't. I mean, it's
Amazon.
fairly...
Amazon.
Well, interesting enough, Amazon now pays to the local entities, so
That's the top.
our increase, a lot of that is due to Amazon.
And I have been contributing. I have been doing
You have done your part.
We've all done
I've
our
been doing my part.
So,
Me as well.
That's the point of sale distribution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the upper, yeah.
so why would you ever think that the total sales tax revenue, based on since we've been in a pandemic, would go down next year from this year? Why would anybody think that it would?
I wondered if there's a lag between, I think much of our strong point of sale distribution came from our grocery stores. A lot of people are hoarding, doing things like that, where I think that might is hoarding.
RVs.
Hoarding is a bad
I think
thing.
the point of sale might, but I wouldn't understand why the total sale revenue, because actually car sales are down, aren't they?
Car sales are up.
Yeah,
Okay.
recently.
All right,
And it took
so-
two months.
You're right,
Sale.
it's really hard to, and
I think everybody's planning for the apocalypse, so, but.
A lot of people still have their jobs here. I mean,
Yes.
that's the key. Our unemployment is really low. I'm very sensitive that not everyone is, I understand, but I just got new numbers from Davis County. They couldn't put it specifically to Kaysville, but Davis County, we're even lower than the state's unemployment, which is one of the lowest in the nation. And so when people still have their jobs, they're able to have very similar spending habits to what they had. And I'm not trying to be insensitive. I know we're in a very critical time, but just like I jokingly said, I'm still spending a lot on Amazon. I really am. I'm still have that bank, and the more homes that come in, the more we're going to benefit from people who are having these online shopping habits and similar things. So I
And
think it's
also,
protected.
we need to remember that $5 billion of stimulus money came into the state of Utah. And so, and we spent it. Thank you very much.
You're right. There's probably
So
about
that could be reflected here.
Councilmember Blackham is correct that at what point do we say, okay, I mean, I'm sure we're not feeling 100% confident, but we're feeling much better than we were 3 months ago. At what point can we start to loosen the reins a little bit and start acknowledging some things that we need to do in our city, and some of them have been mentioned tonight. So I think that's really what we'd like to get out of tonight. I think Dean and I would be, and Councilmember Blackham kind of maybe did that for us in that motion.
I kind of hope I set that stage for you.
I think you did, and 35 days to me is the second meeting in September, and if that's still, that's kind of what I would plan to do based on what's happened tonight.
And, and honestly, if the economy takes a nosedive, then we make changes.
But we also have $1 million, and again, we don't say this flippantly, but we do have that, if we are over our 25% allotment, that makes me feel much better about saying, let's take this year and try to do the things we want and need to do, and even if it's a temporary patch in fiscal year 21, and, Dean may disagree with me, but I'm willing to say, let's patch that with, as things maybe get worse and worse, and we are talking about employing people, which you don't do flippantly, you don't do that and then take it back, you do it and you stick by it, and we may have to stick by that by patching that with fund balance for a year.
Which we have. That's the benefit of now having the numbers.
Thankfully, we have been prudent, and Dean has been judicious in how he does this, and that we're seeing the fruits of that in a time where I keep saying, if there is a time when a rainy day, if there is a rainy day, I think we're in a pretty significant rainy day. It's at least drizzling. So
Misting,
I think from what I'm seeing, and we'll know more over the next 30 to 60 days, that as we approach amending the budget, I think this number here for sales tax, 5.4, is probably the number, and that still is based on just the current year and not a lot of growth, but it's a whole lot more than 4.8 to work with. And then it still gives us some cushion to, if the economy really goes south, that we can work with. Again, within 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, we'll be in a position to really do some things, I think.
Well, I think certainly, the presidential election can have a dramatic impact depending on which way it goes and what happens, because I don't think we've had more of a polar opposite as to what's going to happen after the election than we have this year. It's really dramatic. Either taxes are going to go up by $4 trillion over the next 10 years, or you're going to see, basically trying to boost the economy as the focus. And so that's a huge difference, and I think there'll be a lot different behavior if people realize, their income tax rates are going from right now 35% to going to 45% next year. That's a big change that could happen, that could affect a lot of these economics and what people are buying.
Yeah, Shane.
I'm sorry, I don't want to change the subject, but there's one other thing I wanted to mention, and that was, if we bring this back in 45 days, we'll be talking about personnel, the salary survey, new people, capital projects. But I still believe, and I think Josh would agree with me, that the two water people, it is important, and I would really like, I'm throwing that out there to you, to be able to hire those two folks immediately. It's a different conversation than the general fund. It's the water fund. It's the fees that are in the water fund. And I would ask, my personal recommendation would be to hire those two folks immediately, and then ask Dean, as part of the 45-day comeback, to evaluate those two hires, how that affects the water department, and what we would want to do as far as rates of
I was under the impression
Yeah, I
that
was
we voted to approve those.
confused. We did because
thought
he
we
said
did
he
too.
had the money.
That's true, but I thought we got sidetracked in the
Yeah, we just wanted to be
conversation.
really
and-
clear.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
at least that was
We
what I
wanted to know.
Go forward.
We knew we had the money for this year.
Right.
That's what we were told. But ongoing, then, how do we cover that going forward?
Which would
Go
be
make
the
some
fee
phone calls,
discussion.
Josh.
Yeah, I kind of had the feeling that these 4 council members okayed. I did not, just because.
But he's going to change that now. He's going
Because I
to.
want those firemen so bad, but you guys assured me that the money was
Can't
already
pay for
there.
firemen.
I appreciate that clarification, because I was still a little
Yeah.
unclear, too. So thank you. That's all.
Do it.
I think that's great.
Josh is leaving. In case you change your mind. he's leaving.
Run, Josh.
And just to be really clear, for people watching, that's a different discussion, because it's water budget, but I think we justified that need, and then we've had even more justification since
We
then,
have.
so.
Okay.
I think the message for me is
Yeah,
we're,
say that again, Mike.
I said it's a completely
Yes.
different funding source. That's an
That's
enterprise
correct.
fund. This is done by taxes.
Correct.
Yep, exactly, very different.
Exactly so.
But this is
Good point, though.
really positive. Thank you, Dean, thank you.
yeah, I think the message for me is we're going to finish strong, we're going to finish stable, and my notes here going forward, my recommendation is we meet as a council in October, but now that's been pushed up a little bit, 45 days, but that's okay. And with 4 things to look at in particular, the salary survey, the compensation plan, implement that at least partially, city staffing as a whole,
Retroactively.
that'd be your decision?
I think that's what we said when we said if the funds come in, we were going to do that back to.
Months ago, when we very first looked at it.
And also, I hope you got the additional 1% cost of living, because that was part of.
Well, as I said,
that
the
was
whole
part of my motion.
compensation,
Well, that would be.
that if the funding was there, the whole compensation thing would be done and put back to when it would have originally been
Okay,
implemented.
the second item would be city staffing. That would include firefighters. I think there are some other positions that are needed. I think we desperately need another billing clerk.
Correct.
In administration, we've been talking about that for, I don't know how many years. And some of that can be funded through enterprise funds. We look at capital projects, and that's where I think would be a good use for one-time money, if there are some things we want to do. And then the last thing would...
Museum. Sorry.
The last thing would be the water fund. Look at staffing for the water fund and look at rates in the water fund to pay for that staffing.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you. All right, everybody clear the kind of the direction we're going?
Do we have to make a motion to go to the action for 45 days from now?
No, it's.
I think we
part of the
already did.
motion, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can just make one more comment
Yeah,
there, I mean, I
sure.
think I want to just clarify, my opposition earlier in the meeting was because I don't think we needed to raise the $90,000 on the property taxes, since we had these extra funds that are going to be here, and it looks like the ongoing would be able to cover the things we were going to address. That was the purpose of my opposition to that. It wasn't that I don't want to take care of our staff or take care of the needs of the city, but I think that we had sufficient strength in our sales tax to not have to raise property taxes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, nobody signed up for call to the public, so we are going to go to council member reports. Anyone have anything burning?
Burning, no.
Councilmember Lortz?
I have my update, though.
Okay.
So the power department, all the street lights have been upgraded, so they're all LED, and then obviously the ones they'll have going forward is new development. They have about 650 meters left, and it's mostly the businesses left to install, and they are working with 2 crews on to getting those done. Really, the hot weather's caused some challenges, but it's been manageable through the summer. We haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
So that's really good. The EV stations are getting some use. They've dispensed, I think it was 230,000 kilowatts or 230 kilowatts.
1.11 gigawatts.
Gigawatts.
I think I account for at least 10% of that.
Highway 89 project, right now, their work is done for that. And then the other really important one is the study. They're just finalizing the report, and that should be coming to the city council here in the next 60 days.
Excellent. All right. Any other reports? Councilmember Tran, I did want to see, any thoughts yet on meeting with Planning Commission and Council for a dinner?
Oh, yeah, we want to do it, right? Lyle,
We
as soon
do.
as soon as we can. Do we need to come up with a date?
Maybe if we planned in October, we might be in the new building by then.
Okay, that would be fantastic. October, okay. I just wanted to mention, as far as the business, the CARES advertising, we still have a lot of room in our publications, right, Lyle, as far as, I think we have up to 100 businesses for the hometown values, right? And we've only got maybe 30 businesses that have signed up. So we're trying to publicize that as much as possible and doing some calling, but I would just encourage, if anyone's watching or knowing of a business that would want to participate, to please encourage them to do that.
Free, right?
Yeah, I think that maybe people, and my local Utah, I think that people are maybe intimidated by the idea of placing an ad. So if they need help with that, please reach out, because I'm sure that there are people within our community that would be willing to put a graphic design together, a real simple ad. So, yeah, just want to make sure we take advantage of that. It's a great opportunity for free advertising, so.
All right.
Awesome.
Any other comment or updates from council members? All right. Shane?
Mayor, I want to give you just a quick update on the remodel. We have furniture that's arrived. We're thinking substantial completion could be as soon as the end of this month. Most likely will trickle into the 1st of September. We had those change orders that you approved last week. We appreciate you doing that. Due to those wet soil conditions, I think those were to the tune of about $110,000. That took us to 4% over budget, but technically, really, it's really just 1% because we budgeted 3% as a contingency. So we went over the contingency, we're 1% over budget there, which we're really actually quite excited about. And I wanted to clarify that we had some wiggle room in that Dean budgeted an entire payment. In that first payment, that's not all going to be due. We're going to have to pay some interest at the beginning, but, so there's $300 and something thousand that's what we're using to fund that gap. And then finally, Ryan and I were just talking before everybody got in here, and he's been over there doing the sound and the audiovisual, and he just was really, really excited, and it got me really, really excited too. So if you want to get excited about that building, talk to Ryan about that audiovisual and how, if he's excited about this building, I think we all, it made me really excited too, so.
Can we keep the duct taped or like rubber banded thing?
They're all gonna go.
Microphones?
Sorry.
All right, just for old time's sake.
We're saving money, and all this is going to go over so you don't miss it.
Oh, good. All
There's
right.
tables too.
And the table.
Dais.
Okay.
That table right there is going to stay.
Better be a wall.
With the owl.
Okay. I'm trying to think, anything that I need to update you. We did, in our consent agenda, we reappointed 2 planning commission members, and trying to think if there's anything pressing. No. Just appreciation to all the council members digging in, and it's really fun to see everybody developing their certain areas of expertise. You know, it's like your portfolio is economic development and building and finances and, you know, and so.
Being
anyway,
awesome.
And just being awesome over there. Right. So, but it's fun to see the different opportunities that are coming our way because of the work that the council members are doing. So thank you for all that you are doing.
Question for you, Mayor.
Yes.
Are the planning commission meetings now going to be here?
Lyle?
The very next one will be, so we've done one here since the executive order ended, where it could be completely online. So since we have to notice ahead of time, this is the only space we've had where we can be certain, so we'll be here until we
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Can I?
Yes,
Anyway,
Councilmember
I was
Tran.
just going to make a request. It would be really interesting, I think, for just council in general, but also our community, to know what we're doing with the CARES money. So at some point, could we have a report on that? Just because it's really neat to be able to
As
say,
soon as
okay.
we've decided.
This, right, well, but this is a horrible thing, pandemic, et cetera, but this is what we've been able to do that's really going to benefit the city.
Yeah.
With
This is
using
what
those-
we're spending your
those monies.
grandchildren's money on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right, yeah. This is how it's benefiting us right now, yeah.
Great-grandchildren?
Yes, all right,
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was
I move we adjourn.
Fair point.
Second, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Sorry for the outburst, I apologize. Don't apologize.
That was funny.
30 lashes.